biggest embassy in Europe, if approved, if Starmer bows down to Beijing, as these protesters are saying. Behind me you can see nobody wants this.
No repression at borders! We know that we have to stand up to the abuses of China. And what worries me is that we have a government right now that seems to be scared of China.
What are you doing here at the protest? That's an interesting sign you've got there. Clearly you're not a fan of our Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Why is that?
It's kowtowing to the Chinese government, right? A dictator regime.
Robert Jenrick defected to Reform yesterday. He called the Conservative Party and Kemi Badenoch a leader with no backbone. She's obviously shown up here today and done a speech. It's kind of unprecedented to have that sort of flagrant support. What did you think about her speech and her backing this?
I think any party backing our cause, like going against the building of the embassy, I'd say we welcome them.
Why are you here today?
So I'm Tibetan and I'm here to oppose the Chinese mega embassy being built here. Unfortunately, we think the UK government might allow this to happen, and I think it sends the wrong message to people who have been oppressed by the Chinese government, who are still being continuously oppressed in free countries. There are lots of Chinese decisions which are being followed by Chinese police states.
Now, we know that there are plainclothes Chinese policemen potentially in the crowd, so a lot of them want to stay anonymous, which is very understandable. Why are you here today?
Because it's very simple. It's no mega embassy, and this is absolutely unacceptable because this is a very peak area, and I don't think any one of the country they will have choose one of the peak area, prime area, and make it to their one of the I think it's the biggest embassy in Europe. So this is absolutely unacceptable.
This government is engaging with China confidently and pragmatically and challenging
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning. It is Friday. It is 3 minutes past 6. A warm welcome to Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan with you today and tomorrow and all of next week, sitting in for the great Jeremy Kyle. You can't get enough of me. And breaking this morning, Nigel Farage backs Sir Jim Radcliffe. But is one of Britain's richest men right that immigration has colonised Britain? Was that language appropriate? Has he got a point? Did he say the true bit out loud? Let me know. My number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. Has immigration colonised Britain? That is today's big question. Talking of Big Ange strikes again as Rayner blasts Starmer's pub tax. But as it's revealed, Labour MPs want Starmer to reverse his tougher immigration rules. Will Angela Rayner throw Britain's borders open if she becomes Prime Minister? Drill, baby, drill. Britain must exploit its vast oil and gas reserves in the North Sea. Not the words of Donald Trump, but former PM Tony Blair. So is the push for net zero finally running out of steam? I'll be asking a leading former government minister. In the latest instalment of The World's Gone Mad, children can now socially transition at school. So little Johnny can be Joanna. Is that appropriate in a school setting? Surely they go to school to learn maths, arithmetic, reading, writing. Not that there are 100 genders. What do you make of that woke madness? Meanwhile, a campaign group have caused uproar by suggesting that job seekers should spend several hours a week picking up litter. What do you think of that? Job seekers picking up litter for a few hours a week. Is that cruelty or common sense? And is Sir Jim Ratcliffe right that immigration has colonised Britain? It's all about your opinions. 0344 499 1000. Tommy's on the phones. Sam's pressing the buttons. Neha is directing our TV output, and the boss today is Alicia. And let me tell you, she is cracking the whip. It's tough love here, folks. So my priority for the next 4 hours is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. And I want to hear what you think about immigration. Is the word colonising, is it, if you can say it, is it appropriate? Did he go too far? Or did Radcliffe say the true bit out loud? Well, that is the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. And I'm going to tell you that Dolan's Dispatch is a special one today. It might get me cancelled. Good. Because I'm going to do what Radcliffe did. I'm going to say the true bit out loud. But give me a call, leave us a voice note, text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online. Lovely to have your company. You can also watch the show because this is now a television product. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, hit the live button, and up we pop. For big names, big guests, big opinions, and Dolan's Dispatch. So much to get through, as the saying goes. Let's talk. And we're going to kick off with today's front pages. Neha, let's start, if we can, with the Daily Mail. And Labour opens door to trans children in primary schools. You heard me right. Labour last night opened the door to primary school children, right? And that's kids from about the age of 5 or 6 to 11 being able to change their gender. Long-awaited trans guidance for schools finally arrived yesterday, having been watered down from previous Tory proposals. Don't forget, the Conservatives presided over this wild wokery. 14 years of the Tories in which the NHS referred to women as birthing humans and chest feeders. Labour are doing a terrible job, but they didn't break Britain in 18 months. That's been going on for decades now. But this is a shocking story. Instructions drawn up by now Tory leader Kemi Badenoch forbade primary schools from changing pupils' pronouns, but the government's guidance has scrapped the ban, instead saying those as young as 4 should be allowed to fully socially transition to the opposite gender, albeit, they say, in rare circumstances. Now, the idea of primary school is for a child to socialise and develop relationships with other children. The idea of primary school is it's a safe place for your little ones to be when you're at work. The idea of primary school is that they can begin to get the basics of arithmetic and of reading and writing, a little bit of art. And the other big idea of primary schools is that the kids can safely play and navigate the world. That is what primary school is. And if you wanted to boil it down to one adjective, primary school should be safe, shouldn't it? I mean, it wants to be enlightened, it wants to be friendly, primary school wants to be happy, of course. But surely the number one adjective for a primary school with kids as young as 5 and as old as 11 should be safe. And there's nothing safe about an environment in which they think there are 100 genders, because there are not. It's deeply concerning that our public institutions are in the grip of this woke ideology, this social contagion, this wild psychological pathology. It's worrying that the NHS thinks that a woman is a birthing human and a chest feeder. It's worrying that the NHS doesn't understand that there are two sexes, because those working in the NHS, doctors and nurses, it's their job to fix you if you're broken. And if they don't know the difference between a man and a woman, I'm not sure I want that doctor treating me. Can you imagine having a surgeon that's about to remove a kidney, and that surgeon won't be led on whether only women have a cervix. It's a similar problem within the educational establishment. Do you want a teacher in command of your children that doesn't know what a boy is or a girl is, given they've got a classroom full of them? And it's worse than that, because it's not just a teacher that doesn't know what a man or a woman is. You would have thought that perhaps they'd had a cursory glance at a biology textbook, which would have confirmed, because, by the way, can I just say that every school science textbook is transphobic. The entire GCSE biology syllabus is transphobic. And the reason why is because if you buy a book on biology when you're revising for your GCSEs, it will tell you that there are two sexes. So according to the woke mob, well, biology textbooks are transphobic. And you've got teachers who don't just not know the difference between a man and a woman, but they will propagate that to the children. They will brainwash the children to the point where if you've got a 5 or a 6-year-old, under these terrible new plans from this Labour government, little Johnny goes to school with his satchel and his little sandwich in there and his little drink. Do you remember those little juices you would get with the straw? Weren't they great? And do you remember the straw would always fall off? The number of times I had to suck on that carton. You see, it's not a good look. It's unedifying. I can barely remember the straw ever. But if I change career, I'm going to bring out a little carton of juice that contains a built-in straw. I swear to God. I might speak to Jim Radcliffe about that, because he's got a few quid. And the issue you've got is that your little Johnny goes to school with his sandwich and his drink and his little reading book or whatever, and his crayons and his pencils and his eraser. And when he goes in, they're going to say, "Good morning, Johnny. How are you feeling today? Do you feel like a little boy or a little girl? Are you Johnny or are you Joanna?" And these are the teachers that are in the care of our children now. And I would call that child abuse. I think if you say to a 5-year-old, "Are you a boy or a girl?" that's child abuse. 12 minutes past 6 in the morning, that's what it is. This is a mental abuse of the child. First of all, it's scientifically wrong, because little Johnny is a boy and he doesn't feel like anything today. What he feels like is some blinking Haribos, right? That's what he wants, a Twix. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. Can I tell you, and this is not a joke, when I was about 5 or 6, I wanted to be a car. How's that working out? Not very well, but if I was a car, of course, I would be a Ferrari. The world's gone mad. We're going to speak to some leading political voices on that, but Labour opens the door to trans children in primary schools. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think it's child abuse. Am I going too far? Have I crossed a line? Because I don't use that term lightly, and of course it's not a physical form of abuse, but I believe that it's mental abuse, and I think it's brainwashing, and I think it's based on a fiction, and it's based on a lie. Now, when you're 18... if you're called Bob and you decide, actually, I'm going to be Beatrice and I'm in a frock, good luck to you. I'm a libertarian. You may have the legs for it. You could be very attractive as Beatrice. I've got no problem with that. No one does. But children at school should be safe. They should have their biological sex, little boy, little girl, separate cubicles. They should have common sense. They should have science. And if they don't, then I think the argument for homeschooling grows by the day. These are the same schools that teach kids that Britain's history is outrageous and that we're evil and all the rest of it, even though we ended slavery, gave the world the Industrial Revolution, the rule of law, parliamentary democracy, William Shakespeare and the Beatles. The iPaper, Cull at number 10 as Starmer tries to relaunch his leadership. What an incredibly inept man Sir Keir Starmer is. What an absolute waste of space. It's amazing, isn't it, how bad he is at politics. So the latest thing now, there's a clip going around of him about 10 years ago. The one thing about me, I never throw my colleagues under the bus. If there's a problem, I take the rap. The buck stops with me. Well, he's fired everyone around him, hasn't he? He's fired poor old Morgan McSweeney, who was actually a gatekeeper to the radical left. Morgan McSweeney is the most right-wing figure within the Labour movement. He's gone. So all bets are off now, folks, as we lurch to the left. McSweeney was Starmer's brain, his conscience, his pulse. So it's going to be terrible. This man is an amoeba. He's vacuous. He's barely a human being, Starmer. He's a hologram. He is the human manifestation of ChatGPT software gone horribly wrong. He's so out of his depth. And I think it's going to get worse now that McSweeney's gone. The latest thing he does, his Director of Communications leaves as well. And now the Cabinet Secretary. This is the head of the civil service. And they normally stay in post for 10 years, sometimes longer. The really good ones get to stay even if there is a change of government and a change of political direction. The really good ones can work with a left-wing government and then a right-wing government because they're a very rare example of a civil service that actually fulfills the will of the people. The perfect civil servant, the day after the election, sits down with the new Prime Minister and says, right, the past is gone. What do you need from me? How can I deliver your programme? That is what a civil servant is supposed to do. And they're normally in post for around 10 years. Well, this guy, Chris Wormald, has gone after a year. Why? Well, he's taken the rap for the fact that Starmer appointed a paedophile's best mate, Peter Mandelson, as UK ambassador to the United States. That is not Sir Chris Wormald's fault, an experienced public official. It's not his fault at all. It's Starmer's fault. Starmer knew that Mandelson and Epstein were besties. So he throws this guy under the bus, and it's very interesting. Two things have happened as a result. First of all, Wormald gets a payout of £250,000. Who's picking that bill up, do you think? Will Starmer pick up that bill? Will the Labour Party pick up that bill? £250,000. He's been in post for a year. Of course, you and I will pay that sum. The person expected to replace him is somebody that has been mired in allegations of bullying and the misappropriation of state resources. This is Dame Antonia Romeo, who a previous leading civil servant has said is a wrong 'un. And of course, she's in Starmer's bizarre moral universe, she's a shoo-in for the top job. Make it make sense. The Sun newspaper now, let's have a look at this, and it's another negative headline for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Another royal bombshell. Andy Girl flown to UK on Epstein's Lolita Express. Pressure is mounting on police to launch a sex trafficking probe into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor amid claims a woman was flown in on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet and sneaked into Buckingham Palace. Ex-PM Gordon Brown said 90 flights on Epstein's Lolita Express came into the UK carrying girls from around the world. He called it by far the biggest scandal of all. Now, what's really worrying about this is the idea that these women were being used and abused, allegedly, reportedly, from the Epstein files by Andrew, not just in the UK, but potentially on royal property, on the hallowed ground of Buckingham Palace itself. Really don't know where we go from here with Andrew. Lots of you think he's suffered enough. Lots of you think he's a human shield protecting far more powerful and rich American celebrities and entrepreneurs. You could have a point. Let's have a look at the Daily Star, and we go for Ban United. Radcliffe's sorry, but FA could bar him from the ground. Man United co-owner Sir Jim Radcliffe sort of apologised for saying that migrants colonised the UK, but the FA could still ban the Monaco-based billionaire from Old Trafford. Well, the FA are horribly woke. The FA, the Football Association, are the ones responsible for the ridiculous pantomime of taking the knee, which has long since stopped around the world, but the Brits have carried on doing it. The England football team, who were more interested in woke causes than winning football matches. So the FA are institutionally left-wing and institutionally progressive, institutionally politically incorrect. So of course they're furious with Radcliffe for, in my view, perhaps clumsily, but notwithstanding that, notwithstanding the choice of language, saying the true bit out loud. And I think he's very brave. I'll be focusing on that in Dolan's dispatch at 9 a.m. I'm not pulling my punches. It might get me cancelled. Good. The Guardian now, please, Nehar. PM ousts top civil servant in shake-up of number 10 team. It's amazing, isn't it, how The Guardian make it look like he's somehow spring cleaning his government. No, he's not. This is an experienced civil servant that has taken the hit, has been the human shield, the fall guy for Starmer's poor judgment. Keir Starmer's attempt to shake up his top team after the Peter Mandelson scandal began yesterday when he forced out his top civil servant. It reminds me, do you remember when Rachel from Accounts, the Chancellor, remember her? She's still there, by the way, destroying the British economy. Did you know that we're going to have the slowest growth in 100 years from a government that is the most pro-growth government ever? How's that working out for you? It's very interesting, this particular shake-up. Oh, yes, it reminds me of when Rachel Reeves held that emergency press conference before the budget statement where she pretended the economy was worse than it was, rolling the pitch for tax rises. And then on budget day, she said actually everything's fine. So that was misinformation. That was a bum steer. Some would argue it was a lie. And who goes? The head of the Office for Budget Responsibility, because of the early leaking of the budget, not Rachel Reeves. The wrong person always gets fired. McSweeney shouldn't have got fired. Wormald, this top civil servant, shouldn't have got fired. Starmer should have. All the wrong people, folks, still in post. Daily Mirror. Unmasked horror stabbing. Judge rules teenage thug who murdered Leo 12 in unprovoked attack must be named. Daily Express. UK streets are awash with illegal drugs. The Times. Pupils able to change their gender at school. And PM agreed to £260,000 payout for sacked civil servant. Also, football chiefs step in after Radcliffe kicks off over migration. And the Daily Telegraph. Rayner turns on Starmer over pubs. Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham have called for more tax support for pubs in a fresh challenge to secure Starmer's authority. The two Labour figures, tipped as potential rivals in a leadership contest, suggest the Prime Minister should cut VAT to ease pressure on struggling businesses. Yesterday, Rayner was also backed by a trade union leader who told the Telegraph the former Deputy PM should replace Sir Keir if Labour finishes third in the Gorton and Denton by-election this month. Those are your front pages. One of the best connected journalists in the country is live in the studio. Next, it's 6:22.
Why they're doing this? Why are they extending the rules and regulations that apply to taking your dog for a walk? I don't get it. And as I say, critics think it may be cultural. You know, that around where I live, there's a pretty big Muslim Islamic community, and Muslims don't like dogs. It's well known. Try and get yourself an Uber, take your dog with you, and you'll experience a lot of trouble. I know, because I've been there myself. You see what I'm saying?
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is exactly 6:25. With me in the studio, one of the country's best connected journalists and broadcasters, Benedict Spence. Good morning, Benedict.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. Sir Jim Ratcliffe has told Sky News that Britain has been colonised by immigrants. He has since apologised for the language, but not the message. Is he right? Did he say the true bit out loud about this country?
I think certainly there is a lot of truth there, and it's certainly a position that I think a couple of years ago it would have got him cancelled, so to speak. This time around he's saying it, and whilst there are attempts to silence him and shut him up, I think a lot of people are much more prepared to say that they agree with him. And if we're being honest, in the sort of the truest sense of the word, yes, a form of colonisation, has been going on. People have moved from several other parts of the world to this part of the world, and they are extracting resources or using it for economic opportunities, and they are exerting political influence over it. I mean, this is part of the problem, I'm afraid, and this is, one of the interesting things we have with the sort of the backlash against Jim Ratcliffe from a lot of left-wing people saying it's outrageous language. Well, it's outrageous language because those same people have spent the past 20, 30 years trying to turn the word colonised and colonialism and everything into one of the great sins of all time. That's been the effort here, is to take what is on the face of it a technical term and turn it into an act of evil. And now that it's been weaponised back against them, well, they're absolutely furious at that. They don't like it when you start using their boogeyman words back at them.
Well, that's exactly right. And the good aspect of his so-called allegedly clumsy language is that because he spoke in such unfiltered terms, it's sparked a conversation. It's got echoes of Suella Braverman referring to the small boats crisis as an invasion.
Yeah.
It's important that we have this national conversation, and sometimes it takes a little more tabloid language to spark that conversation and to wake people up a little bit, I would argue.
Absolutely, although I wouldn't even call it tabloid language. It is the language of the people who have been dominating all conversations in this country for far too long. It's being turned straight back at them, and they just don't like it very much. It's one of those things where actually, if you are in control of the cultural narrative for so long and the political narrative, when you find people sort of, weaponising your own tactics against you, you feel very flustered and you feel very upset. And I think it was really interesting how actually the response from Keir Starmer and Ed Davey and many other politicians was not to say, well, that's his opinion, I just happen to disagree with it. They all said he should apologise. He should apologise, because it's not about having free and fair debate in this country for these people. It's about shutting people up. It's about saying, toe the line, know your place.
Well, the left have attacked Sir Jim Ratcliffe, partly because what his remarks do is destroy the narrative that diversity is our strength, that immigration is an unalloyed benefit to our society and to our economy. And it's particularly upsetting for the left because Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not a frothing right-winger. So before the election, he recommended that Sir Keir Starmer should be our next Prime Minister and endorsed Labour.
Yeah.
Just 18 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, we know that diversity is our strength, don't we? Because every time anything happens, we constantly have to be reminded, because otherwise, if we just followed the evidence, we might forget. But Jim Ratcliffe is not, as you say, some sort of political firebrand. He's a businessman. He's somebody who wants the best environment for his business to actually work, to actually function. He's somebody who, for all you've got the howls of opprobrium from people saying, oh, he doesn't pay his tax in this country. He creates an awful lot of jobs in this country, and they all pay tax, and his businesses and his employees and everything else does. He has created far more wealth in this country than, say, Sir Keir Starmer has. But I thought it was interesting, as you say, he backed Sir Keir Starmer at the last general election, and even in this conversation, this interview with Sky News he said he thought he was a decent man. He also said, and I thought that this was much more interesting, it's the bit that, in their, bid to be hysterical and to find defence and to cancel somebody, he also said something that I thought was more interesting, which was that he thought Nigel Farage was, quote, also a decent man. And what he then went on to say was, what the country needs is politicians prepared to take the difficult decisions, prepared to be unpopular. And what he was hinting at there was not anything to do necessarily with Keir Starmer. He was saying that he didn't necessarily think that Nigel Farage had the cojones, if you like, to take those difficult decisions. And I thought that was the interesting part of this interview, not the use of the naughty word.
Well, I think you raise a good point, and also he drew attention to the cult of welfarism and how unsustainable our benefits bill is. This is a guy that understands the bottom line. He's one of the richest men in the country, and he knows that the UK spreadsheet is a hot mess. Another important message from him that's been ignored by the woke elites.
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple mathematical equation. When you've got that many people on out-of-work benefits or even in-work benefits, that's the other thing.
Many of whom are immigrants.
Of course, a lot of them are immigrants, but it wasn't even necessarily just starting from that point. He talked about the colonising after he mentioned the disparity in terms of how many people are working, and that's a simple equation. And of course, then when you get onto the issue of immigration, it's one of the things that we're constantly told, again, a bit like diversity is our strength, is that you need immigration to grow the economy. And anybody with half a brain cell understands, well, yes, if you put more units of value, which is what they refer to people as, if you put more units of value into an economy, it grows. But that doesn't necessarily create wealth. That has always been the issue between GDP and GDP per capita. Then that's always, you know, the sort of the sleight of hand that's played. And I thought, again, really interesting yesterday. Whilst all this was going on, it was revealed the UK economy had grown by 0.1%, below expectations. Again, we are effectively in a recession in this country, have been for a very long time, and we're constantly told, oh, don't look at the economic figures, don't look over there, look over here instead, at the diversity and the progress and all these good things, and if only we just import another million or so people, everything will just be fine, the number will go up, it'll very slowly go up, but it will. Everybody else in the rest of the country can feel it. And the problem with a lot of this is, it sort of treats a lot of immigrants themselves as sort of, you know, almost sort of helpless babes in all of this, helpless little lambs. They're not stupid. So many people who have come to this country over the years are voting reform, are tending towards parties like that, because they themselves can see, look, when this was being measured in an easy way, and it was high-skilled, and it was people who were driven to integrate, it worked. Now it doesn't. It's unprecedented numbers. That's what Jim Ratcliffe said. It's what Duncan Bannatyne has said as well, coming out in defence of him, and it's what a lot of people in the mainstream are now saying.
Should 5-year-old children be allowed to transition their gender at primary school? That's Labour's incoming policy. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. And Farage backs Radcliffe. That's next at 6:32. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 6:34. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Has Britain been colonised by immigration? Christina says, good morning, Mark. Yes, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is spot on. I just hope that he doesn't back down to that bully Starmer. We are being colonised. We need Reform UK more than ever. That is Christine. Well, let's take a listen to Sir Nigel Farage. He has backed Radcliffe's remarks. Let's take a listen if we can, Sam.
Well, he said that our population has gone up from 58 million to 70 million, and that with 9 million people of working age on benefits, we don't need mass migration. He said much of the country had been colonised by immigrants. Now, that word was a controversial word, and he said, OK, if you don't like the word, we'll tone it down. But just think about this. You ask yourself why public services have diminished. You ask yourself why rents have gone through the roof. The population explosion has done that. And then you look at parts of London, for example, where the road names, the underground signs, aren't just in English, they're in a foreign language as well. 1 million people living in this country don't speak any English at all. 4 million people living in this country barely speak passable English. And that's the point that he was making.
George says, good morning, Mark. How many migrants does or did Sir Jim employ to create his billions? Not being confrontational, but it's important to establish the facts. And as for the infant story, kids transitioning at school, I'm 100% behind you. That is George in Leicester. How about this? Sharon says, good morning, Mark and Benedict. I really don't think that Sir Jim Radcliffe should have apologised for what he said, because what he said is the absolute truth. This is what the British people think. Sharon, thank you for that. And let's take a look at one more message if we can. And this is about kids transitioning at primary school. This is Rachel who says, good morning, Mark. I've got a 5-year-old daughter who asks constantly, why can't she be a bird? I think it's disgusting that children can change their gender. It's child abuse, and I believe that patients who let their children change genders should have... I believe that parents who let their children change genders should have their children taken off them. There are only 2 genders, male and female. Anything else is just a mental illness. It is a scientific fact. And another Rachel says, good morning, Mark. Rachel from North Yorkshire here. I'm disgusted by Labour bringing trans activism into primary schools. Children should enter this new chapter of their lives with confidence and self-belief and being comfortable in who they are. Trying to groom them into believing that they've been born in the wrong body will cause confusion, a crisis in confidence and mental health issues down the line. Leave the kids alone, says Rachel. Let's take a voice note from Dan on Sir Jim Radcliffe and the suggestion that Britain's been colonised by immigrants.
I think what Sir Jim Radcliffe said was right. He's looking at the UK as a business. He wouldn't employ 1,000 more workers just to sit on their bums, not to contribute to the business, not to help profits. And I think that's what's happened in the UK. We've got to a turning point where we've allowed so many people into our country, and including our own, just to sit at home or on their backsides and eat into the profits of our country. And it's got to a point where it can't sustain the loss anymore, and it's either we go bust or we get rid.
Powerful words. Thank you, Dan, for the first voice note of the day. We're going to take so many more as the morning continues. Nigel Farage, Benedict Spence, has calculated that Sir Jim is saying the true bit out loud, and he's quite happy to stand foursquare behind him.
Yeah, and I think that this is... It's a bit of an interesting shift, I think, because up until now, we've not really had too many public figures outside of politics prepared to come out and say these sorts of things, or at least nobody major. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is somebody who is wealthy enough that it simply doesn't matter if people attempt to cancel him. You know, what are people going to do? You know, are Man United fans going to stop watching Man United because of his views? I mean, they already watch them and they're that bad. So, you know, is this going to change anything? No, it's not, ultimately. Are they going to boycott his businesses? When you're talking at that end of the industry, no, they're not going to do that because he said this bit out loud. And it's that sort of thing, isn't it, where when powerful enough people, rich enough people, people see things aren't working and are prepared to sort of say things and speak out and can't really be easily dealt with by a government, I think that that's when you understand it's broken through. Because, you know, this will have been a calculated move as well. He will have weighed up the pros and cons and gone, is there any way that this can have any kind of blowback on?
He's not a stupid man.
No, he's not a stupid man at all. And he will understand that, and that he will take a lot of flack for it. And we will see that. It's on the front pages of all the newspapers. But if you've got a major politician who is riding high in the polls, who also happens to agree with this, well, that shows you right there. There is certainly an audience for this, a market for it, if you like. An awful lot of people agree with it, and those are just the ones who say it out loud. So many people in this country right now, people who vote Lib Dem, Green, SNP, sorts of parties that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be sort of, saying these sorts of things. They aren't saying it out in public. But in private, actually, you'd be surprised the conversations that I have when I go to all sorts of places and just chat to people. It's very quick. It's so quick once they understand that they're in a so-called safe space, that they can say what they think. A lot of people feel the same way. And it's not because of xenophobia or anything like that. It's because people are not stupid. They see, as Farage said, the impact that this has on services, the impact that this has on wages, the impact that this has on cohesion, and they go, I didn't want this, I didn't ask for it, I was okay when it was a small number of people who all wanted to assimilate and all wanted to be British. Yeah, it was a great thing. It was a sign that our culture had, it escaped the bonds of nationalism or ethnicity or anything like that. But when you're importing literally millions of people, most of whom in fact do not want anything to do with Britain beyond the financial benefits that it gives them and the fact that it's a better place to live, that's when you're going to start to get problems. We've reached that stage. That's why Reform are doing so well, and it's why nobody's going to buy this attack line from Labour, that it's somehow evil and bigoted, what Jim Ratcliffe has said.
If there are communities in the country where English is not spoken, where there is a different attitude towards women...
Like Wales.
Correct, and that's not just the sheep. If there are parts of the country, areas in our cities that are 95% or even 98% ethnic, is that colonisation?
Of course it is. Of course, by the technical definition, what actually is the establishment of a colony? It's no different, people from Kashmir doing it, the ancient Greeks landing on the shores of Italy and setting up their own towns and cities there. That's the exact same process. Because we've got a slightly different thing now where they don't turn up with swords and start killing the locals, that doesn't mean that they're not establishing a colony. And if you go to places like Birmingham, like Bradford, like Oldham, like Blackburn, you will find this, the establishment of... It's wrong to say it's ghettoisation, because they're not really ghettos. In many cases now, they are the majority. They form the community. And I think that we have this view, I say we, people in London have a view that it's all minorities and that it's all sort of, mixing together, because London is very different to the rest of the country. London has got lots of different communities and they all sort of jostle up against each other. But actually where you go to a lot of these cities in the Midlands and the North, it is homogenous in that it is one or two groups coming en masse from another place and deciding this is where we live now. And as you say, where they have different attitudes and they're not prepared to change those attitudes, and instead they say, actually, we think we're going to have our approaches to life, we're going to have our standards, we're going to have our culture here, we're going to have our language here, and there's nothing you can do about it because you're racist, if you do. At which point the middle-class English people go, oh, well, we can't possibly be racist, that's the worst thing you could possibly be. That is, I'm afraid, that's a form of colonising. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with just admitting that that's happening?
Well, it's 6:43. Let's take a listen to those original remarks by Sir Jim Ratcliffe, if we can, Sam. And here he is, speaking to Sky News.
I don't know whether it's just the apparatus that hasn't allowed Keir to do it, or he's maybe too nice. He's a nice... I mean, I know Keir, he's a nice man, I like him. It's a tough job, and I think you have to do some difficult things with the UK to get it back on track, because at the moment I don't think the economy is in a good... You can't afford... you can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
Well, those were the remarks, the now notorious remarks, which have sparked a national conversation. Here's a voice note from Jay.
So I think people are missing the point. So Jim was explaining about the welfare and how the system can't cope. It can't cope with this mass amount of people coming in, but it can't cope with a lot of them on the benefits, around 1 million. That's ridiculous. If we were bringing these people in to enhance the economy, the NHS, doctors, engineers, the famous saying, no one actually would complain. I'll give you an example. Look at the Gurkha regiment in our military. These are from a completely different country. Every Brit I know, whether they've served or not served, they're proud of them and they're honoured to have them in the British military because they fight for king and country, they represent us and they are us. So there you go.
Jim, they are us indeed, and that's the point, isn't it? Thank you for your voice note. It's about immigrants who integrate, who participate, who put more in than they take out. And the so-called Boris wave is a national scandal, as indeed, in my view, are the illegal boat crossings. Now, the left, Benedict, have attacked Sir Jim, saying that he's a tax exile in Monaco and that his remarks are effectively far right. But here's the thing. I think it's all the more admirable of Sir Jim to speak out, because this is a man whose wealth insulates him from the consequences of Britain's mass immigration experiment. He doesn't have skin in the game. He's fine. He's in a gated mansion. And therefore, it's all the more laudable that he should use his platform to speak out.
I mean,
he's a true patriot, isn't he? Because he doesn't need, sorry to interrupt you, but he doesn't need to have this conversation. He doesn't need to be brave. He doesn't need to make himself unpopular. He doesn't need the negative headlines.
Oh, no.
So he can only be doing it out of the sense of righteousness and patriotism.
Well, there's an irony to all of this. I mean, first and foremost, he's not in this country paying tax because he doesn't feel that the country is going in the right direction, because the environment is not conducive to people like him. He is not the only one. There are an awful lot of people who have got their money out.
And if we had a business-friendly environment, he'd be living here.
Exactly. And there is nothing actually to say that you have to buy into the system to be able to criticise it, that you should allow yourself to be robbed blind before you can then criticise somebody. That's a silly thing to say, and it must be said it's a very left-wing thing to say. It's also very ironic in many ways, given, you know, people are saying that because he's a tax exile, because he's moved, he shouldn't have a view on what's going on in Britain, he should keep his mouth shut, because these are the same people that physically cannot help themselves from weighing in on the politics of the United States or Israel. As far as I'm aware, none of these people are American citizens or Israeli citizens. They certainly don't pay any tax to the US Treasury, to the US government, sorry. So there's the second bit of irony. And there's the next bit, of course, which is that these are the same people for whom things like citizenship and borders, well, they seem to be optional. And these are people who have been more than happy to allow the UK's system to asset strip the third world of its young working people, to bring them from the third world, which, let's be clear, means that the third world stays poor. If you take all the doctors out of Ghana, well, what do you think happens to the Ghanaian health system? And that is a true example. There are more Ghanaian doctors and medics in the NHS than there are working in Ghana. It's a scandal, but we think that that's perfectly okay because, I don't know, man, borders don't matter. Well, if you're okay with somebody just rocking up because it's better for them, what's your issue with Jim Ratcliffe doing the same? But those same people then go, it's outrageous that he's gone. He should be made to stay here. He should be paying tax. But equally, if British citizenship is so easily bought that you can just rock up here and you can just be British, anybody can be British, well, surely that means you can just magically become monegasque if you decide to move to Monaco. What business have these people got criticising a citizen of Monaco? That's his business. You know, that's an outrageous intervention in monegasque life. I think that's an outrageous thing. Do you see the sort of the contradictions at play here?
Massively.
There's generally the sense of because he's wealthy, he should shut up. No, famously in history, the more you create, the more power you accrue, the more you have to say. And I know it really upsets people who want everything to be redistributed, but that is how the rest of the world works.
100%. Terry's not pulling his punches. Good morning, Mark. Sir Jim Ratcliffe should tell the left to F off. Yikes. Peter says, good morning, I'm British and I live and work in the Middle East. I was chatting to a Pakistani work colleague last week and he said he thinks the UK has been spoiled by mass immigration. This is his view, and Radcliffe is right. Why has the Liberal left had all of the headlines on this one? And we'll have another message here from Jeff saying, good morning, gents. Labour are really trying to make sure that they never get to steer the ship again with ridiculous policies. No vision, no future. Starmer's visions are not for the people. So, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, is he right that Britain has been colonised by immigration? This is Talk Breakfast at 6:49.
he's stating the obvious, and I think that a very large majority of this country's voters will agree with every word he said. And you've got basically ghettos occupied entirely by one particular migrant from a particular area, and they've got together, and this is where multiculturalism has been such a disaster. DEI formula is not diversity, it is actually division, and they are dividing themselves against us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, what about this for a headline? Donald Trump's $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the BBC over doctored speech on Panorama is set for trial in Florida next year. Could the president bankrupt the corporation? Who better to ask than Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, one of my favourite humans as well. Good morning, Kinsey.
You know, I just would love to spend my pre-Valentine's Day with Mark Dolan, obviously, talking about President Trump. Could President Trump bankrupt the BBC? I mean, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be President Trump.
Most definitely. Well, the BBC, the corporation, has failed in its efforts to get this lawsuit delayed. So therefore, a major headache for them and a potentially massive bill.
It's going to be unreal. And Donald Trump has done this here in the States with the ABC station when George Stephanopoulos said on air that Trump did something that he did not do, or actually in court was found to be innocent of, as well as CBS. I mean, it really feels like CBS completely restructured based on that Trump win. They brought in an entirely new team. It's the anti-woke channel, and they're going through a lot of struggles there. So we know Trump has a lot of power in this space.
Most definitely. Is this story making headlines in the United States?
You know, honestly, Mark, all we're talking about is Savannah Guthrie's mother being missing, to the point of me wanting to pull my hair out. I'm like, have you guys seen the Epstein files?
Well, indeed. Now, this lady, Savannah Guthrie, is a TV host, and quite shockingly, her elderly mother appears to have been kidnapped. And so that is the equivalent of, I don't know, Eamon Holmes's mum being snatched or something. So it is a shocking story. Is there any hope that she'll be returned home anytime soon, this poor lady?
Can you believe it's been almost 2 weeks since she went missing? They found a glove this week that they believe belonged to the suspect, and they also were able to collect some like Ring door cam footage, Nest door cam footage, I think it specifically was, that they had to hack into the cloud to get because the intruder stole the physical camera. So we got to look at the suspect, but he's got a mask on, he's got multiple layers of clothing on. I have no idea what's going to happen next. It's like watching a horror story in real time, especially with all these proof of life videos that Savannah and her siblings are posting on social media requesting proof of life for their mother. The kidnapper wants $6 million in Bitcoin.
Yikes. I mean, why has this TV host been targeted, do you think? Is she particularly rich or powerful?
I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on and repeat to you some of the stories that I'm seeing online. She interviewed a lot of the Epstein victims, Savannah Guthrie, and some of the people that are following the story online wonder if it's associated.
Now, Kinsey, with me in the studio, Benedict Spence. More bad headlines for the BBC. Not a good look that they're being sued by the leader of the free world, that their legal efforts to have this case delayed or dismissed have completely failed.
Yeah, I mean, just on the subject of that story right there, I find it curious that people are demanding a ransom in Bitcoin, given what's currently happening to the value of that. I mean, that's a high stakes ransom.
Well, I know. I mean, if I kidnap anyone,
perhaps Donald Trump would like us to pay him in Bitcoin as well.
Definitely. Well, I might
see the value change
because you're in such close proximity, Benedict. I might kidnap you.
Yes.
After the show, and I'm going to ask for either gold or silver.
I was going to say my weight some gold or silver.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that's a lot of money. Not more than I'm worth. The thing is, it's all very funny watching this BBC thing unfold, because we all know they are going to be sweating an awful lot, because obviously he means it. There's more than a little evidence to suggest that he may have quite a strong case. And we all love watching the BBC getting a bit of a kicking these days, because it's not exactly covering itself in glory. The problem is, who's going to end up paying for it? Because we can't think about the BBC in the abstract. It is funded by taxpayers. The BBC will not go bankrupt. It will even, let's say hypothetically, Trump took all of its money. It will be bailed out by the British government. Who does that mean ends up paying for it? That means us. We're going to end up paying for it. The licence fee will go up. People will be prosecuted more than they currently are for not paying the licence fee. And of course, people need to pay the licence fee in order to watch any other kind of broadcast media. It's one of those things where, as much as we can all say, well, it's about time that it, got a bit of a bloody nose, ultimately it will end up hurting every consumer of media in this country if Donald Trump ends up succeeding, because it'll be paid for out of taxation. And it means that every other broadcaster will end up having to basically cough up a little bit of that, because in order for the license fee in order for people to consume that content, the license fee that goes to the BBC has to be paid. So it's hilarious, and at the same time, the joke is going to end up being on us.
Kinsey, the White House consider the BBC to be a mouthpiece for left-wing propaganda, don't they?
They do. I mean, you could look at the war in Gaza. I think that they would use that as an example there. But I mean, I look at the BBC and I think about the Princess Diana interview. I mean, Benedict's exactly right. A lot of us look at our watches and go, yeah, it's about time. But unfortunately, I agree with him that the only one that hurts is you. The only person whose pocket it's going to hurt is yours. So I won't cheer on Trump too hard, because I love both of you, and I don't want you to go bankrupt.
Well, no, that's very kind of you, and I appreciate that. What would happen if the BBC were landed with a $10 billion bill is they'd have to live within their means and stop paying woke sportscasters £1.4 million a year to read out football results, or woke radio presenters £1 million a year to spin records and say, isn't it sunny outside? Kinsey, regarding the BBC, you're so right in regard to Diana, because Diana was tricked into doing that Panorama interview, which proved to be devastating for the late princess.
Yes, and I don't know if you read the book Dianorama by Andy Webb, but he goes into the deceit, years of deceit, and the leadership and management in the BBC that covered up this story, and they knew exactly what had taken place, and they weren't going to allow Martin Bashir to be held accountable. It's unreal. It's unbelievable.
And that interview, it was the beginning of the end for Diana, wasn't it? And it's reading between the lines of what Prince William has said in the past. He's implied that the BBC have got blood on their hands, given that Diana's life took a shocking trajectory after that TV appearance.
Well, can you blame him? Martin Bashir goes to Diana and specifically says, with faked documents, with forged documents that he hired a graphic designer to make for him, that her security detail is spying on her. She's so paranoid and upset by this idea that the security guards are whispering things into her husband or her husband's ear, that she fires them, and that's why she was without any safety the night that she died.
Powerful words. Kinsey, will speak soon. This is Talk Breakfast. Has Britain been colonised by immigration?
Hello from Crowborough, where the local residents are enraged with what has happened to their community merely overnight, when just 27 single male asylum seeker illegal migrants were bussed into their military training camp. Behind me are local residents, people from all over the country. Shabana Mahmood has said that this is an effective way of getting rid of those expensive, flashy asylum hotels. But unfortunately, these people are still placed within the community.
Whole town is very afraid because these are unvetted men from countries that are, the government warn us not to go to. I've got an 18-year-old daughter and she gets the bus opposite camp.
Do you feel safe for her?
No, so that will have to stop.
Right.
We'll either have to wait with her or take her to wherever she needs to go.
The reason I'm here today is because I live in Crowborough and my family, I've got a wife and children, and just worried about, my wife walking to work and my sons, walking about. Anything can happen, can't it, that nowadays and age, all what's going on, what's happening in this country. So I'm just concerned and frightened,
There was support from other towns, other communities, because of course Shabana Mahmood has threatened other communities, and she said they're going to open site after site after site. Well, I would hope that if she's going to try and do that, she learns some lessons about the way she's done it in Crowborough, because this is not finished. We are not finished objecting to this plan.
Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no! Crowborough says no!
We would urge her to reconsider, and whatever she does, she needs to talk to the people that she's imposing these things on.
If you had a direct line to Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, what would you say to them?
Look after your most vulnerable first. It's your priority to look after your vulnerable.
If they're bringing illegal immigrants into a camp in the dead of night, why are they doing that? They're doing that because it's disingenuous, it's dishonest.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
.702, this is Talk Breakfast. A very good morning. This is indeed Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan with you today, tomorrow and all of next week in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. And breaking this morning, Nigel Farage backs Sir Jim Ratcliffe. But is one of Britain's richest men right that immigration has colonised Britain? Do you share that view? Was it the right language? Let me know your thoughts. My number is 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, Big Ange strikes again as Angela Rayner blasts Keir Starmer's pubs tax. But as it's revealed, Labour MPs want Starmer's possible replacement to reverse tougher immigration rules. Will Angela Rayner throw open Britain's borders if she becomes Prime Minister? Drill, baby, drill. Britain must exploit its vast oil and gas reserves. Not the words of Donald Trump, but former PM Tony Blair. Is the push for net zero finally running out of steam? I'll be asking a former government minister. Could Donald Trump bankrupt the BBC as a Florida court approves his legal action against the corporation to the tune of $10 billion? Meanwhile, a campaign group have caused uproar by suggesting job seekers should spend several hours a week picking up litter. So, is that cruelty or common sense? My priority for the next 3 hours is to get your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. Tommy's on the phones today. Give him a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222, or leave us a voice note. We love the voice notes because you are busy people. This is Alarm Clock Britain. Lots of you are getting breakfast into the stomachs of your kids, getting them ready for school. Many of you getting ready for work as well. Plenty of you at the tail end of a night shift. If that's the case, I salute your efforts. Thank you for your contribution to the unstoppable powerhouse that is the British economy. So much to get through. You can listen on the radio, DAB+, in-app and online. But you can also watch the show. This is a TV product, let me tell you. And all you have to do is go to YouTube, search Talk and Up We Pop for big opinions, big guests, big stories, and Dolan's Dispatch. And today I'm backing Sir Jim Ratcliffe all the way. It's my view that he said the true bit out loud. That is Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. You won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. It might get me cancelled. Good. So has Britain been colonised by immigration? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. As the saying goes, let's talk. And we kick off with the front pages, and we start, if we can, with the Daily Telegraph. Angela Rayner turns on Starmer over pubs. Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham have called for more tax support for pubs in a fresh challenge to Sir Keir Starmer's authority. Two key Labour figures, tipped as potential rivals in a leadership contest, have said the Prime Minister should cut VAT to ease pressure on struggling businesses. Meanwhile, Angela Rayner has been supported by one of the country's biggest unions to replace Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister if he loses the Gorton and Denton by-election. Is Angela Rayner's path to number 10 now inevitable? The Times newspaper: football chiefs step in after Radcliffe kicks off over immigration, and pupils able to change their gender at school. Meanwhile, Prime Minister agreed to a £260,000 payout for sacked civil servant. This is Sir Keir Starmer throwing everyone around him under the bus for that Peter Mandelson appointment. The heart of that is that Starmer knew exactly how much of a wrong-un Mandelson was when he gave him the top job. So the wrong person has quit, should be the PM. Daily Express: UK streets are awash with illegal drugs, and United chief is sorry but wants open debate on migrants. Daily Mirror: horror stabbing unmasked. Judge rules teenage thug who murdered Leo 12 in unprovoked attack must be named. And The Guardian: PM ousts top civil servant in shake-up of number 10 team. Meanwhile, gift to polluters as US revokes climate ruling. Daily Star: ban United. Radcliffe's sorry, but FA could bar him from the ground. The Sun newspaper: Andy Girl flown to UK on Epstein's Lolita Express. Ex-PM calls for cop probe. That's Gordon Brown. 90 flights into Britain. The I newspaper: cull at number 10 as Starmer tries to relaunch his leadership. Well, let's get reaction from the brilliant journalist and broadcaster Benedict Spence. Benedict, welcome to Talk Breakfast. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Jim Radcliffe has sparked a massive debate about immigration. Did he choose the wrong words?
No, I don't think he did choose the wrong words, and I think that simply because, I don't want to sound like I'm echoing his not quite apology afterwards, but if people are going to get hysterical about the use of language which is perfectly accurate, well, that tells you about the state of debate in this country. The technical term, colonised, absolutely applies to the process that has happened across great swathes of this country, in certain parts of this country, and the fact of the matter is people are responding this way because the left, many people on the left, have chosen over the last couple of decades to make the word colonised, along with colonialism, this great evil, almost on a par with Nazism. It's the great sin of this country, empire and all of that.
It's the idea that when let's say, Brits go overseas and dominates a foreign culture, that's a bad thing.
Exactly.
If it happens in the West Midlands or East London, it's a good thing.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because, of course, what you had was a lot of Labour MPs coming out and other MPs, Lib Dems, coming out and saying, this is outrageous. And the implication that they make is that it's not happening. But then what you get is a lot of other people going exactly what you've just kind of said, which is, yeah, but you were over there, so why shouldn't they be over here? So you've got people on the same side saying two diametrically opposed things. People saying it's not happening and it's outrageous that you're saying that it is, and people stood right next to them going, actually it is happening and you ought to just put up with it because your ancestors were evil. That's the level of debate that we're facing. Two separate people, sets of people who have vastly different approaches to what's actually going on, but both absolutely agree that Jim Ratcliffe is wrong to use the naughty word. Actually nothing to do with what he said, it's the words that hurt people.
Did Sir Jim Ratcliffe simply say the true bit out loud? Mary has called Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Mark. I agree entirely, I'm afraid, with Sir Jim Radcliffe, but I feel very disappointed that he's even offered any comment or response to it. I think he should have just ignored it all. J.K. Rowling has done exactly the same thing. She's got the wealth behind her to be able to do it, and I don't understand why he it shows a certain amount of weakness, actually.
Well, I think you're right, Mary, and he's been attacked by the usual suspects, including the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who has implied that his remarks are racist. Was Sir Jim Ratcliffe being racist?
Well, I think we've got beyond the say of racism, because it seems to be more like a religious thing that's dividing things. We were a Christian country. We now seem to be becoming an Islamic country. Well, it's not a race, is it? Because anybody can become a Muslim, and anybody can become a Christian. So I wouldn't say it was racial.
Well, I think you're right about that. And good integration doesn't have to be about skin colour, does it?
No. And you know, the thing that does surprise me is why the unions are so in hock to this business of immigration. The people who pay their union fees are usually the British people, British workers, I should say.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure that these immigrants that come over here, whether they're legal or illegal, they don't join a union. They, in fact, join a culture, but they don't join the union. So the union wouldn't get the funds that they need to run. But they seem to be embracing the idea.
You're so right. Common sense at 7:12 in the morning. Mary, call me again soon. Really enjoyed that chat. That's Mary in Hemel Hempstead. We're joined in the studio by one of the best connected journalists in the country, the political commentator and broadcaster Benedict Spence. Down the line, the Labour MP for Hull East, Carl Turner. Good morning, Mr. Turner.
Good morning, Mark.
Listen, we'll get to some of the big topics of the day in relation to government policy. Can I ask for your reaction to the comments of Sir Jim Ratcliffe? Was it an example of wrong language but right message?
Look, I think, to be fair, I think he's entitled to say what he thinks he wants to say, but I think he was wrong, frankly. I think we ought to be proud of the people who've come to this country to help the country with such as healthcare, as an example. If we didn't have healthcare workers coming in, frankly, we wouldn't have people being looked after. That's the reality, in my view.
Well, I think we can all agree that many immigrants make a huge contribution to this country. But did he have a point that, given the state of the national debt, the country's finances, Carl, that if you have too many low-skilled immigrants coming into the country, it's a net cost to the taxpayer?
Well, I think there's got to be a balance. And frankly, the Labour government are doing everything we can to stop illegal immigration, people coming in on dinghies across the Channel. But frankly, we're not doing enough fast enough. That's the reality, and that's why people are getting cheesed off with us, I think.
I mean, is scrapping the Rwanda plan an example of doing everything you can to stop illegal immigration, given it was the only deterrent we had, Mr. Turner?
Well, the Rwanda plan was incredibly expensive, and I think, what was it, 2 people went back to Rwanda with 5,000 quid in the pockets. I mean, it was hardly a deterrent. It was more of an incentive.
What would you say to the Irish Taoiseach, who at the time complained about the Rwanda plan before it even began, because so many migrants were not hitting the UK and heading over to the Republic?
I didn't know that's what the Irish Taoiseach was saying, frankly.
Well, indeed, and I will say that Rishi Sunak was very happy to trumpet that at the time. Can I ask you, Carl, about this intervention from the former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner in regard to pubs? She and Andy Burnham have joined forces to effectively suggest that hospitality venues like pubs should be spared the worst excesses of VAT. Do you share that view?
I've not seen the detail, Mark, if I'm honest with you. I'm in Liverpool all-day hospital with my little girl who's had major surgery, so I've not been on top of it yesterday.
Oh, listen, we wish her well, and we've got prayers for a speedy recovery for your daughter.
It's very kind, but I think the reality is, if you speak to most publicans, they say that what the government are proposing is not quite enough. That's the truth. 15% off what was promised is hardly enough to cut the mustard, and people are worried. If you're a Republican, frankly, you are concerned about your business.
Well, indeed. So Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham, Carl, have called for more tax support for pubs in a fresh challenge to Sir Keir Starmer's authority. They've suggested the PM should cut VAT to ease pressure on struggling businesses, a policy I suspect you would support. Out of which departmental budget would you pay for that support?
Well, I don't know. I've not said I agree with it. I would have to look at the detail and find out. I would probably, instead of saying something publicly about it, I'd probably speak to Rachel Reeves and the PM rather than going off publicly.
But, I mean, in principle, do you think hospitality venues need support, given that they're a big part of the economy, they're part of the social fabric, they're a focal point for our communities, and they are a big employer of young people? Surely it's a no-brainer on Talk Breakfast at 7:16 to go, yes, I would support hospitality.
Well, I do support hospitality, and what I say is that my local boozer in the village where I live in, Hull, is the community hub. Frankly, it's somewhere where people often go to have a pint and socialise. The reality is people are at home on their own a lot of the time. If they're single and getting on a bit, they want to be going out and doing something, and it's too expensive, actually. It's far too expensive.
So you would, in principle, back a VAT cut for pubs?
I'd have to look at the detail of it,
Well,
Matt.
what is the point of your warm words about old people having a pint at lunchtime if you can't back it up with a policy that would actually help these venues?
Because I'm not prepared to back Burnham or Rayner's policy without having a look at it and speaking to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. That's the reason. But do I, in principle, support more support for pubs? Absolutely, categorically, yes, I do.
Well, what would that support look like, Carl?
Well, I'm not the Chancellor, Mark. Bless your cotton socks. I know you'd like me to get me out there, but
You could suggest, for example, that pubs should pay less VAT so they can stay open, and that could come out of a different departmental budget. Perhaps the Department for Education or the NHS could live better within its means, and that could go to our landlords.
Well, you could suggest that, Mark. I'm not prepared to suggest that. I'm prepared to work with the Chancellor of the Exchequer to find out what she can do, if anything, to support pubs. I'm happy to support her if she comes up with something. I think she needs to look.
What do you make of those statistics that 7 or 8 pubs are closing every single week?
I think it's devastating, but I think 5,000 boozers closed under the Tories, far too many. I think what we really need to do is get together and work on a plan to save the boozer, because actually it's an important community hub.
Would you acknowledge that the reason why the pub closures have accelerated is the national insurance tax raid, the red tape surrounding workers' rights, and the increase in the minimum wage?
I'm very pleased about the support for workers. I think the government should be proud about the fact that for a first time for a very long time, people who go and work for a living, get up in the morning and go to graft, are being supported by a government that was on their side.
Well, it's bad news for pubs, isn't it? Because it makes it harder for them to hire people in a casual basis, such as 0 hours.
There might be other mitigations that can be put in, but in relation to workers' rights, I'm a big fan of workers' rights. I'm a Labour MP.
I mean, the pub landlords are not. So, I mean, you keep saying that you support the pubs, but all of the policies I've outlined are hurting the pubs, and you won't tell me how we're going to support the pubs financially.
I do think the national insurance increase was a mistake, personally.
Aha.
Said it at the time.
Bingo.
I said it at the time. I think in relation to not-for-profits, well, you've not cross-examined me into some concession, Mark. Don't congratulate.
No, I think it is. I think you've got one part of the jigsaw puzzle that explains why 8 pubs a week are closing.
Don't get yourself all excited about having achieved a sort of a
This is the gotcha. This is the Dolan gotcha. You've been gotcha.
It's not a gotcha.
I've taken you down, Carl.
Well, the reality is, look, I've always been concerned about not-for-profits and charities paying NI. I think there was a very clear indication to local authorities who've been savaged for years by the Tories, didn't have to pay, but the not-for-profits are under the cosh as a result of NI, and that is preventing them from using the resource to help communities. I think that was a problem.
Most definitely, and I agree with you. There you go, we found some common ground. Angela Rayner, she's much better at politics than Keir Starmer. She should be Prime Minister, shouldn't she, Carl?
Look, we've got a Prime Minister, we've got a leader of the Labour Party.
Haven't we just?
We've got a leader of the Labour Party who happens to be the PM. You know, the electorate put us into power in July 2024 with a fairly strong mandate. I mean, what do you want him to do? Pack his bags and leave just because a few people are saying he's not very good?
Don't give me ideas. I think that Mr. Blobby would do a better job than the Prime Minister at the moment, Carl, given the fact that We're now anticipating the slowest growth in 100 years. Inflation is sticky, almost double the Bank of England's target, and we've seen the return of the old enemy, unemployment, a bit ironic from the party of working people who now, it turns out, aren't in work.
Well, the truth is, I mean, the first 18 months have been a bit difficult. We've made a few mistakes. I think the Prime Minister's over-relied on advice, which hasn't been very good advice.
Yes.
I think what we need to do now is get a grip of the stuff we're planning, the stuff that was in the manifesto. Don't take Labour MPs by surprise. Crack on and do the stuff we promised, and let's see what the country make of it in 3 years from now.
There are challenges. If Sir Keir Starmer were to step down, Carl, let's just imagine a scenario where he's no longer Prime Minister. Do you think Angela Rayner would be the preferred candidate, and could she fix those problems that maybe have happened under Starmer's leadership?
I think Starmer can fix the problems by not over-relying on advice, which I think was poor. I mean, look, we've got people coming out now, Mark. If you want to talk about something which is a serious thing and it's happening, you've got people like Lisa Nandy coming out and speaking about the bullying that her and her colleagues had under Mac Sweeney. That's an important thing that the Prime Minister needs to fix. Labour MPs are briefed against, if in fact they have the audacity to speak against policy. It happened to me. I don't like the idea of jury curtailment. I think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's workable. I think we should scrap the idea completely. But if you say that as a Labour MP, they start to brief against you. Those are the things that Keir Starmer as Prime Minister can fix, and that's what I want him to do.
Carl, before we let you go, thoroughly enjoyed your company this morning. You're a man of common sense and ideological consistency. What do you make of this headline in the Daily Mail? Labour opens door to trans children in primary schools. It's the idea that little Johnny can become little Joanna at the age of 5 or 6. Surely that's not appropriate for such a young child in a setting that's supposed to be safe.
If the headline is right, I think it's absolutely stark, raving balmy.
There you go. A straight answer to a straight question. How rare from a politician. Carl, thank you for your valuable time. Have an excellent Friday and let's catch up soon. I've got an idea of how we can save Britain's pubs. Carl Turner and I are going to go and have a pint at one of his excellent locals in Hull East. And that's how we've got to do it. Because one thing we can do, obviously, reduce the amount of tax that hospitality venues are paying. The other thing we can do is use our pubs more. That is the best way to save them. Carl Turner, thank you very much for that. Benedict Spence, your reaction to what Carl Turner had to say there?
The thing is with the closure of the pubs, and he's right actually to say that this has been going on for far too long and on the watch of Conservative governments as well, is that the closure of pubs relates directly to the sale of pints of beer, because that's what a pub ultimately is for. I know they do other things, but that fundamentally is what it's about. So why is it that for a £5 pint of beer, which in itself is pretty staggering that we're talking about £5 pints of beer being fairly standard across the south of England now, a pub will make about 12 pence profit on a £5 product, 12 pence of profit if they're lucky. And it's a cumulative thing. It is the perfect encapsulation of everything that is wrong in our society, because it's not just the taxes, although they are a huge part of it. It's everything. It's the impact on agriculture, because of course, 20% is of the cost is the seed, it's the grain, it's the process of making the beer in itself. So if energy costs are high and if agricultural costs are high, then that has a knock-on effect, and we both know that those are very high. If things like the water system is not working properly, as we all know it isn't in this country, that has a knock-on effect as well. And then of course you have the massive lobby in this country from the health fanatics that say that actually the socialisation that you get from going to the pub, the community, that's not important because we need people to be drinking zero alcohol. The impact of changes around motoring legislation, the reduction of the minimum amount of alcohol that you're actually allowed, the maximum amount of alcohol you're actually allowed to drink before you can drive. Things like that, changing speed limits so that it takes people longer to get to the pub. Little things like that. All of it builds up on the process of killing off the Great British pub. Now, would cutting tax help? Yes, it would. Huge numbers of pubs would absolutely love that alleviating amount of pressure being taken off their shoulders. But it won't save the industry long term, because everything that goes wrong in the UK at some point has an impact on the pub. You want to talk about migration? People coming from places like Pakistan in the Middle East, they don't go to the pubs, they don't use the pubs. So you've got millions of people coming into the economy. Are they contributing to the pub economy? No, they're not. Are they contributing to the nighttime economy? They're not, because they don't drink alcohol. You see what I mean? It's one of those things where it's the everything crisis. If something is going wrong in the UK, there's a good chance it impacts your pub. And it's not a surprise, therefore, that so many of them are closing.
The brilliant Benedict Spence. Join us again soon, Benedict. A broadcaster, political commentator. What an interesting conversation. Has Britain been colonised by immigrants? I'll be asking the fearless Ben Habib next. It is 7:26. This is Talk Breakfast.
The use of the word colonising, absolutely there is an issue. It is emotive language. And if you remember, Ian, a few months ago, one Keir Starmer talked about Britain possibly becoming an island of strangers. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. Which one could argue is much more of a pejorative comment.
Yeah, well, of course, he got hammered by some of his own MP colleagues because of the use of that language. But it shouldn't deflect away from the thrust of what Sir Jim was saying.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Has Britain been colonised by immigrants? Darren says, good morning, Mark. Just go to Whitechapel or Bradford for two examples. Then you'll see that, yes, we've been colonised. None of the women work. Very few of them. Look at the statistics for Somali women working. Virtually none of them do so. Lisa in Northern Ireland, good morning, Mark. Carl Turner, your Labour MP guest, spouting the usual BS about how the NHS would fall apart without immigrants. But he did not mention all the millions that come over, bringing all of their relatives, all draining the welfare system with no intention of ever getting a job, etc. Let's remind ourselves of the remarks of one of the richest men in the country, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, on immigration, speaking to Sky News.
I don't know whether it's just the apparatus that hasn't allowed Keir to do it, or he's maybe too nice. He's a nice. I mean, I know Keir. He's a nice man. I like him, but it's a tough job, and I think you have to do some difficult things with the UK to get it back on track, because at the moment I don't think the economy is in a good. You can't afford. You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits, and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause.
It's been colonised.
It'll cause. Well, The UK's been colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
Let's get reaction from a very good friend of mine, the leader of Advance UK, Ben Habib. Ben, good morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Was Sir Jim Ratcliffe wrong to use the language of colonisation?
It's really interesting. That comes from a 14-minute interview he did with Sky News, I think a couple of days ago. And 13 minutes and 59 seconds of it, or perhaps 13 minutes and 50 seconds of it, doesn't involve the use of the word colonize. In fact, it's a brilliant interview in which he reveals how the United Kingdom has been deindustrialized and how Europe more broadly is incapable now of defending itself, medically treating itself, and producing food because it has so got rid of the ability to create all those essential items which every country should have for its own national security, but essentially on the back of the drive towards net zero. That was the overarching discussion that he had with Sky News. And everyone's focused in on his use of the word colonized. The point he was making, which is absolutely valid, is that we've had far too much immigration into the United Kingdom of people who are not contributing to the economy. They're either unskilled, doing jobs which prevent productivity from improving or keep British workers out of jobs, or they're literally on benefits, neither of which are, helpful for the British economy. That's the point he was making. Everyone's focused on colonized, and I suppose in a way it was good that he used the word colonized to the extent that it got people to focus on what he was saying. The tragedy, though, is having focused on what he was saying and then nailing that word colonized, he then moved on to apologize for it. He should have held his ground. He should never have apologized for the use of that word. He got people's attention, and he rightly got people's attention.
And Ben, with the best will in the world, I think that Advance UK is going to be a very important voice within the political sphere, but I think we can all agree you're not going to win the general election.
I don't agree.
Well, go on. Well, that's it. Well, look, you will be fielding candidates and you may have representation in the House, but I suspect an overall majority might be a little ambitious at this stage. Notwithstanding that, do you think that any future administration can reverse the damage that's been done from Britain's failed open borders experiments?
I absolutely think it can be reversed, and it can be virtually reversed on a sixpence if there was the political will to do it. There are some significant legislative changes we need to make in order to give us the ability to do what's required. But once you've got the ability to do it, you can just do it. You can remove, frankly, even now, you can remove benefits from all foreigners. There's nothing that obliges us to give foreigners benefits. There's no act of parliament that cannot be changed in order to reverse that. That would take 1.5 million people out of benefits. You can, instead of putting these migrants who enter the country illegally into four-star hotels, free NHS, free dental care, and all the rest of it, you can put them in camps, perfectly civilized camps, where their human rights are not abused, but in camps where they get the day minimal amount of assistance required in order to survive. In France, these migrants are getting they have spent on them about £5,000 a year per head. We're spending about £55,000 per illegal migrant per year. I mean, that is an absolutely staggering sum. It indicates why they're crossing the channel to the UK. These things can be done overnight. But of course, if we were prepared to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, reverse the Equalities Act, and take a more draconian approach to those in our own country who aren't working. Again, Ratcliffe, in the clip that you played, mentioned the 9 million people, I think it's about 8 or 9 million people in this country, who are on benefits. Those benefits need to be removed, and the tax burden needs to come down so that people are encouraged to get off benefits and back into the workplace. And that's a dramatic improvement for the economy, because if you take someone off benefits, say they're getting £10,000 a year on benefits, just for the sake of the mathematics, and you put them into work and they're now paying £5,000 per annum in tax, the Exchequer is £15,000 to £20,000 better off, roughly speaking. £10,000 to £15,000 coming off benefits and £5,000 in the Exchequer's pocket because of the tax that is now being paid. This country could have the direction of its travel changed dramatically overnight if there was the political will to do it. But we do not have the political will to do it. Shabana Mahmood made a very, very soft suggestion that the right to stay in this country, indefinite leave to remain, a concept which I find balmy, that just by the effluxion of time, you should be given the right to permanently stay in this country as if you're a British citizen. She's made the very soft suggestion that the time period should be doubled from 5 years to 10 years. And the Labour Party has come down on her like a ton of bricks. They do not have the political will to do even the smallest things that might improve this country's position.
Well, indeed, and it's been suggested that there are left-wing Labour MPs lobbying the Prime Minister to reverse even the small changes outlined by Shabana Mahmood. Ben, I wish we had longer. We'll catch up soon. Thank you for your valuable time. Ben Habib is the leader of Advance UK. What about this? Drill, baby, drill. That is the sentiment not just of Donald Trump, but of our former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, whose think tank has called for Ed Miliband's green energy strategy to be completely replaced with a drive for cheaper power. In a damning report, it argues that Labour was risking Britain's place in the world by pursuing an expensive strategy of maximising wind and solar energy. Let's get reaction now from the Shadow Secretary of State for Energy and Energy Security, Net Zero as well, Claire Coutinho. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
A rare opportunity for you to agree with Tony Blair.
Well, I'm glad they finally caught up, because this has been the Conservative position. It's absolute madness that Ed Miliband is shutting down the North Sea when we know we're going to need oil and gas for decades. All we are doing is making ourselves more reliant on imports, and we're doing that in the name of climate change when those imports have higher emissions. So it's completely absurd. Most countries, excuse me, I've got a bit of a croaky voice this morning.
Bless you.
But most countries would kill to have domestic oil and gas supplies in the way that we do in the North Sea. It's absolutely vital that we back it.
Most definitely. And I think what's important to stress is it's not just the bills for my viewers and listeners when they're at home switching on the radiator, all the rest of it. It's a cost for industry, high energy prices as a result of net zero. This is a national security issue too, isn't it? Because energy security is national security.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you look at how dangerous the world is getting, and the fact that our hard industrial power, that is our war power, that is the machinery, all of the skills that you would need if you were going into a war situation, it is absolute madness that this is the moment in time that Ed Miliband is choosing to virtue signal and make us more reliant on imports, shutting down all of that industrial power that we need.
Most definitely. What are the long-term costs of net zero? If we continue with these policies, how will life be for my viewers and listeners in, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years, Claire?
Is this net zero is making us poorer. It's making our energy much more expensive, and it's also creating all of these costs that sit across society. Now, I recognise my party in the past had a different position on this, but under Kemi Badenoch's leadership and the positions that I took when I was Secretary of State, I think it's really important that we move past this and we think about the bigger priorities. We have some of the cleanest electricity anywhere in the world, but it's also some of the most expensive. And that's why the priority has got to be cheap power. So we've set out a cheap power plan that would cut electricity bills by 20% for households and businesses. No other party has a plan to do that, and we'd be able to do that instantly. You could do that overnight. Ed Miliband could do that now if he wanted to. And going forward, you need to rewire the system to focus on cheap power and make sure that our industry can thrive. As I said, this is not just about the economy. This is not just about jobs. This is not just about living standards. All of those things are incredibly important. This is also about our national security as well.
Labour would argue that our fossil resources are not infinite. We're going to need to transition at some point anyway. They will argue that there are big economic and job employment opportunities from green energy. And they would argue that the planet is provably heating up. They're the only party serious about climate change.
Mark, this is just simply nuts. The question is, are you going to need oil and gas? If you're going to need oil and gas, you should extract everything you can from your own country. As I said, it's actually lower emissions than bringing in foreign gas from abroad. So that is
dirtier energy. Dirtier energy.
It is just madness. And then secondly, just let's talk about this bigger issue, climate change, the global emissions. If you are making industry in this country move abroad to countries which are still powered by coal, goal, you're actually increasing global emissions. You might look at your carbon calculator for the UK and say, well, isn't it great? We've lost our chemicals industry and our refinery industry and our plastics industry, and our emissions have come down. You still need all of those things. You're just importing them from abroad with higher emissions. So we have to be really clear-eyed about this. And the most important priority for the country is to make sure our electricity is cheap. And by the way, if your measurement, the thing that you really care the most about is decarbonisation, more people will want to use that electricity if it's cheaper.
Briefly, last question, Claire Coutinho. This relates to your brief as Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities in the UK. Daily Mail front page headline, Labour opens door to trans children in primary schools. Labour last night opened the door to primary school children changing their gender. So that could be a child as young as 5, 6 or 7 years of age going to school as Johnny and deciding that they're Joanna. Your reaction?
I think we've got to be extremely careful about children in the trans debate. Of course, we want to treat people with compassion. And I personally think adults should be allowed to have lots of freedoms. We want them to be able to live their lives the way they want to. But when it comes to children, we must also protect them. And when we did this guidance in government, we were very clear that you should not, for example, be using the wrong pronouns for children in primary school. It's too confusing for them. They're not able to make those decisions at that age. And we've seen this as part of a trend in the change in the way the Labour government is dealing with this area, because in the puberty blockers trial, which they've restarted, we know that they are not ruling out children as young as 8 to go on.
Well, do you know something? Cut off in her prime, but clearly big pushback there from the Shadow Minister for Women and Equalities in the UK in regards to the idea of primary school kids changing their gender. Claire, thank you for battling through a heavy cold to join us. We appreciate your valuable time. Claire Coutinho there, member of Shadow Cabinet. But look, this is our big conversation of the morning. Is Sir Jim Ratcliffe right? Is Britain being colonised by immigrants? More on that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to the policies of this government, it appears now that Britain will have the slowest growth in 100 years. Let's get reaction from a top entrepreneur and former star of the BBC Apprentice show, Lubna Zaidi. Lubna, welcome back to Talk Breakfast. Good to see you again.
Hello, same here. You have to excuse me, though, because I'm still experiencing a very itchy cough. So if it starts, I'll try not to die live on air.
Well, look, I'm glad that you've soldiered through your cold. I think you've got the same thing that Claire Coutinho's got, and it's going around. But there is another pathogen, and that is recession, low economic growth. Are you surprised by these figures that project glacial growth for the British economy?
I'm not surprised, and I'm actually expecting things to get worse. It's very clear that, I mean, Rachel Reeves doesn't know what she's doing. I still have the image of her crying in Parliament. That doesn't give me a lot of confidence. You know, I mean, I don't mean to be rude. I've had my fair share of online drama, but still, I'm not running this country. So, you know, she's saying a lot of things that she's positive about the growth next year, etc., blah, 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 blah. But actually, the Bank of England is expecting the forecast to be lower than what the government is expecting. I think they're expecting it to be 0.9%. And this decade seems to be the lowest in economic growth in 100 years. So, I mean, all the indicators are actually quite negative. But it's not surprising to me because, I mean, all the drama and the clown show that we experienced last year with the leaks of the budget leaks and, you know, the government changing what's going to happen. You know, we need to invest in this country. Businesses will not invest if they do not have certainty, if they don't have stability. They need to trust the government in terms of that the government's going to do the right things. And everything the government has done has been counterproductive. All we've done essentially in this country is attack businesses. Why would they want to invest? Unless the businesses invest, how are we going to achieve economic growth? So I think that, you know, I'm not surprised. Actually, I feel like I'm bracing for the worst. 2026 will be, I'm expecting it to be a worse year than 2025. And we'll see what other drama the Labour Party will create this year. We'll see.
Do you know of wealth creators and figures in the business community that want to leave Britain?
I mean, I haven't heard of anyone who wants to come to Britain. I mean, whether it's online, whether it's, you know, conversations people have in private, who is speaking about ever coming here? And actually, we're always telling our entrepreneurs and the businessmen and women off all the time, you know, and we're seeing this kind of stuff with Sir Jim Ratcliffe as well. I appreciate that some of the comments he made, some people haven't liked. However, still, he is someone who has contributed to this country, and we're just attacking businesses, businessmen, businesswomen, entrepreneurs all the time. If you are someone who wants to work hard in this country, you get the whip. You're attacked. You know, we're not encouraging people who can actually contribute and work really hard. It's the opposite. We are encouraging people to sit on benefits, essentially. Why would I want to work hard? There's so much red tape around. If I want to start a business, if I want to do anything, you know, if I want to climb the corporate ladder, just saying I'm working in a professional job, the tax increases are so high. It's not worth it to me now to try to, you know, go up in terms of the corporate ladder professionally either. So it's just, I might as well just stay where I am. So I think, yeah, I'm not hopeful. I think it's a clown show. I don't trust the government. I don't trust Rachel Reeves. There's going to be more drama in 2026. I think it's highly disappointing. And, you know, I feel like we need to watch this space. But I would love to actually leave the country, A, for safety reasons, because of what I've experienced, but also because of the future for my children doesn't look bright here either. And I feel like those people who are living on benefits, they're likely to benefit. Whereas I'm someone who wants to do well, I want to contribute. You know, I love this country, you know, don't get me wrong, and I'd love to be part of turning this country around. Yeah. However, there seems to be an active force, i.e. the government, who should be leading us into a positive direction. There seems to be an active force. It's almost as if they're our enemy. You know, these people are supposed to be leading us. They're supposed to be supporting us, but they seem to be against this country. I mean, I just can't fathom it. It's just crazy.
Well, that's right. I mean, we've got policies that are destroying growth from a government that said it was going to be the most pro-growth government in history. The old enemy of unemployment is back. That's on the rise. Ironic from the party of working people who it turns out aren't in work. Inflation, which is a tax on everyone, especially the poor, is at almost double the Bank of England's target. So the statistics aren't good. And also this sort of low level of growth is an interesting one, isn't it, Lubna? Because if you've got below 1% growth, that is an effective recession for my viewers and listeners.
Exactly. And it's sad that Rachel Reeves she doesn't come across to me as an honest person. You know, I appreciate that politicians need to say things that, you know, will make them look good, but you have to come to the point where you have to be honest, at least with yourself, you know, in terms of the situation in the country. And, you know, it is sad because if you look at GDP per capita, that's actually down. And for me, that is the most important indicator more than the total, right? So I feel like the KPIs, the key performance indicators that the government is focused on are the wrong ones. And, you know, I feel that they are incompetent, sadly. We need more competent people, and we need those people who are honest enough to lead and be honest about the situation in the UK. But I feel like the decisions they're making are more to make themselves look good, to protect themselves more than the country. We need someone who can lead and look at the long-term vision. We're always looking at the short term, and then in the long term, of course, that's not working in our favor. So, they are responsible for this country. They need to take responsibility if something does not go right.
Lubna, briefly, if you can, so Jim Ratcliffe, who you mentioned, has talked about the cult of welfareism. Britain clearly lives beyond its means, a view that I suspect you would share, given your earlier comments. What about his suggestion that Britain's been colonised by immigrants? Is that a case of the wrong words but the right message?
No, I think it's exactly the right word. I mean, if you look at the dictionary definition of colonized, this is exactly what's happening to the UK. And now I appreciate that the word colonization has been linked to, negative sentiments in the past in terms of either Britain colonizing other countries, etc. However, the dictionary definition is bang on. Britain has been colonized. What else would you call what's happening to Britain? I mean, even when I was growing up, Britain looked different, and it does seem to be a different country now. And I'm quite fed up of people always speaking about the good stuff about multiculturalism and not being honest about the drawbacks as well. I'm happy to talk about the good impact of multiculturalism, etc., etc. However, there are drawbacks, and I feel like those people who are honest about the situation and how they feel, they always get penalized. And most people have had enough now. They just want to speak their truth without people gaslighting them, essentially, right? So Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he spoke his truth, and by gaslighting him, he's not going to change his opinion. He's just not going to maybe use those words. But a lot of people share the same sentiments as him, including me, and my parents were born in Pakistan, so, and even my mother, who was born in Pakistan, she can see the change as well. Like, she's obviously lived here longer than me. She's like, this country's not the same country anymore. So we need to stop assuming that it's only people who are white who feel this way. It's actually also a lot of people from an immigrant background like me who share the same sentiments, and I'm fed up of being silenced. It's not in the interest of this country to have more and more people here. A lot of these people are just economic migrants. They don't necessarily want to contribute. Yes, there are lots of people who are contributing, but there are also lots of people that aren't, and we need to be able to speak our truth. So the truth shall set you free.
Lubna, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I hope you'll join us again in the very near future. What a fascinating conversation. Lubna Zaidi is a former Apprentice star and entrepreneur. So much more to come. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, was he right to say that Britain is being colonised by immigrants? Lubna Zaidi says yes. What say you? That's next.
Murdered all those people at that school, that Canada school shooting yesterday.
What are you on about, Julia?
Who
For
murdered?
God's
Was it a
sake.
man or a woman?
No, I'm sorry.
Was it a man or a woman?
No. Yeah, we're talking about education.
Who was it?
No, stop it, Julia.
Stop
because
what?
What you're doing there is you're equating regular trans people.
Regular
with
trans
murderers,
people.
right? And you know what you're doing
No.
by doing that.
No.
You're stirring the pot.
You're saying you believe that men can become women and women can become men. I don't think they can.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A shocking headline in today's Daily Express at 7:56 on Talk Breakfast. Drug cartels are tightening their grip on Britain because Labour has, and I quote, lost control of our borders in every direction. Border Force have seized a staggering 148 tonnes of narcotics worth almost £3 billion last year. The rise was driven by a sharp jump in seizures of Class B drugs such as ketamine and herbal cannabis. But critics have warned that communities are awash with illegal drugs because drug kingpins are exploiting porous borders, weak sentencing laws and falling police numbers, with supply at record highs. So that is 148 tonnes of narcotics, folks. And that is quite literally the tip of the iceberg. Let's get reaction now from Neil Woods, who is a former undercover police officer who infiltrated drugs gangs and is the author of the book Drug Wars, the terrifying inside story of Britain's drug trade. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning.
Neil, thanks for your time. These statistics won't surprise you.
No, I mean, we've been celebrating, allegedly celebrating record seizures of drugs since drug prohibition began. You know, since the Misuse of Drugs Act in 1971, seizures have just increased year after year. And that's because it's the biggest policy con in the history of policy making, because drug prohibition does not work. All that's happened year after year is the size of the market has grown. And if you consider, you know, in these times when we need to be investing more in security for all sorts of geopolitical reasons, wasting tens of billions on this enforcement it suits organised crime, and it's an incredible waste of money.
But Neil, do you want heroin or cocaine or ketamine to be as readily available as a pint of San Miguel lager?
No, absolutely not. I want them under control. I want them under control. That's the point. We need legal regulation. Wherever a nation has taken a public health response with strict regulation, then deaths drop. You know, and in the UK, we have the highest drug deaths in Europe, the highest drug deaths, the highest drug seizures. These things are not separate. You know, the harder you work on law enforcement with the drug supply, all you do is you disrupt the market, which suits the most nimble business people within organised crime. So no police activity reduces the size of the market. In the last measurable 12 months, the wholesale price of the coca leaf, for example, which is the precursor plant for cocaine, has gone down 70% in 12 months. There is no law enforcement response to that. So, for example, in Switzerland, they have taken legal control of the heroin market. They took control of it in 1994. They started prescribing to people who are using problematically. And as a result, they do not have a heroin problem, like at all. They don't have children dealing heroin like we do in the UK. And you know, the real killer is that the Swiss used British evidence for that policy.
Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? And issues like shoplifting is driven by the drugs trade. And Neil, you feel the answer is less law enforcement because it doesn't work. I wish we had longer. Let's catch up again soon if we can, Neil. Thank you for your valuable time this morning. Neil Woods is a former undercover police officer, author of the book Drug Wars, the terrifying inside story of Britain's drug trade. Has Britain been colonised by immigrants? More on this next. I'll get the wise words of Anne Widdecombe.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
(8:02). Happy Friday, one and all. The weekend starts here. I'm Mark Dolan. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. I'm with you today and tomorrow. I've got Sunday off, and I'm with you all of next week in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. And a very busy 2 hours to come. Breaking this morning, Nigel Farage backs Sir Jim Radcliffe. But is one of Britain's richest men right that immigration has colonised Britain? Big Ange strikes again as Angela Rayner blasts Sir Keir Starmer's pubs tax. But as it's revealed, Labour MPs now want to reverse the government's tougher immigration rules. Will Angela Rayner throw open Britain's borders if she becomes Prime Minister? Drill, baby, drill. Britain must exploit its vast oil and gas reserves. Not the words of Donald Trump, but former PM Tony Blair. So is the push for net zero finally running out of steam? Speaking of Donald Trump, the president has been given the go-ahead to sue the BBC for $10 billion. So have the corporation got it coming? Have they brought this on themselves? Do you back the president's legal action against the BBC? Meanwhile, a campaign group have caused uproar and outrage by suggesting that job seekers should spend several hours per week picking up litter. So is that cruelty or common sense? And Labour want kids at primary school to be able to change their gender. That means that a 5 or a 6-year-old could go into school as little Johnny and come out Joanna. Your reaction? My number is 03444991000. Tommy's taking your calls today. He's just made me an outstanding cup of tea. He's really put a bit of lead in my pencil this morning. And I've got a big question for you. Not only should kids be transitioning at school, but Jim Radcliffe, did he say the true bit out loud? Was he right to say that Britain's been colonised by immigration? 03444991000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Now, this is a radio programme. You're listening on DAB+, in-app and online. But this is a TV show as well. Talk is now a TV and radio network. And if you want to watch the show and watch my brilliant guests, watch The Big Opinions, watch Dolan's Dispatch, watch Anne Widdecombe, who's waiting in the wings, all you've got to do is head to YouTube, search Talk, and then click the live button, and up we pop. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Well, I'll be taking a bullet for Sir Jim Radcliffe in Dolan's Dispatch at 9 o'clock. I rejoiced at his remarks. I think he said the true bit out loud. That is Dolan's Dispatch in an hour's time. I promise you won't want to miss it. But something else you don't want to miss is the wise words of Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister, now Reform UK supporter. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning to you.
Anne, it's great to see you again. Did Sir Jim Radcliffe say the true bit out loud?
Well, I think the problem is solely with that word colonised, because everything that he said, apart from that, is absolutely accurate. The fact is that both major parties are paying lip service to curbing immigration, only the Lib Dems are not. And why are they doing that when they've always, taken a much softer line? Well, the answer is because they know that the British public are utterly fed up and worried by the sheer levels of immigration that are now happening. So, of course, he was right to speak out. Of course he was. Now, he himself has said, that one word, well, if it offended people, he didn't mean to, but he's doubled down on the substance of his remarks, and that's got to be right.
Anne, have you gone woke?
Me? Woke? No, I'm not remotely woke. Why do you think?
Well, because you're offering a hint of hesitation about the word colonisation. Now, I've just spoken to a young woman, an entrepreneur called Lubna Zaidi, who's the parent of foreign immigrants, and she said Britain has been colonised. She would draw your attention to parts of East London, parts of the West Midlands, where 95 or 98% of the population are ethnic. Many communities living a parallel existence, ghettoised societies that don't speak the language and sometimes practice their own laws. If that's not colonisation, I don't know what is.
No. What I am saying is, and this is just pure common sense, don't obscure the principal argument, which is what you've just said, you know, that there are parts of the country where people do now feel they're in the minority and they're a bit baffled by what's going on. All that is true. All I'm saying is, let's get so fixated on the word colonised that we worry about that instead of worrying about the issue.
Most definitely, and it's a bit rich, isn't it, for Sir Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham to attack Sir Jim Radcliffe for pointing out not just the societal consequences of mass immigration, Anne, but the economic consequences too.
Oh, the economic consequences are and always have been huge. The social consequences are, if anything, greater, because you are trying to accommodate numbers that we simply cannot accommodate. That's why they're in hotels. That's why they're now talking about taking council houses when, you know, there are already huge demands for those. So the social problems are enormous as well. And Keir Starmer said he was going to stop the boats. Well, you know, record numbers are coming in and they're arriving almost daily. And what most of the public feel is that they're helpless with all of this. They're helpless, that no government is getting a grip of this. Well, reform will.
And it's interesting regarding Sir Jim Radcliffe, Anne, because he's been attacked for being a billionaire tax exile. Well, I think it's all the more impressive, given the fact that he, as a rich man, is insulated from the consequences of Britain's failed open border experiment. He's demonstrated that, given he hasn't got skin in the game, he's quite the patriot. He doesn't need to create this drama, but he's done it for the right reasons.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, he is right to talk about it. And if, as you rightly say, he himself is not going to be adversely affected by it in any way. I mean, he's not going to live next to a hotel, which is full of migrants. He's not going to pay the enormous bill that the rest of us are paying.
Well, bless you, Anne. Bless you. Take your time.
No, it's okay. It's just the end of a winter cough.
It's going round.
It's going round, yes. Stop distracting me about my cough and let me speak about the more important.
Well, you were getting onto a very good point, which is that I think that Jim Radcliffe has demonstrated he's a patriot. He's got nothing to gain from his outspoken remarks other than a love of his country, Anne.
Well, I think that's right. You know, he has no personal reason to resent the levels of immigration. He's resenting it on the part of Britain, and that is right. And as I say, you know, both major parties are now talking, paying lip service to controlling immigration. None of them have got the sort of plans that Reform have got, and this is going to go on. I mean, this is the real thing to understand, Mark. This is going to go on for another 3 years.
Well, indeed, and the issue is that we've got a culture now, Anne, where people are punished and told to apologise for speaking the truth. That appears to be Sir Jim's great crime.
Well, I mean, absolutely, but we've had that attitude in this country for a very, very long time. There was a time when you could hardly even mention the word immigration without being accused of being right-wing and fascist and everything else. And I remember that time. You know, I lived through it. And it was so in the Blair years in Parliament. You know, if you mentioned immigration, well, you were demonstrating that you had no feelings and that you were an unworthy human being.
Yes.
At least we are now at the stage where we can discuss immigration, and what is even better is with the underlying assumption that it's gone much too far.
And Anne, let me get on to another topic whilst I've got you, because I think this will provoke a reaction on your part. Labour last night opened the door to primary school children changing their gender. Long-awaited trans guidance for schools finally arrived yesterday, having been watered down from previous Tory proposals, which were robust. What it means, Anne, in plain English, is that little Johnny, aged 5, 6 or 7 years of age, can go to school and come out little Joanna. Your reaction?
Well, I mean, they've tried to say that it should be very rare. In fact, they have said it should be very rare for a primary school child to transition. I would have preferred them to say it simply cannot happen at primary school level. I mean, the only real advance in this guidance, and I think it is a good advance, is that it now acknowledges the role of parents. I mean, before we had a situation where parents would find out, sometimes by accident, that their children were being known by a different name and different pronouns in schools. At least this has said parents must be involved, but this should just not be happening at all at primary school level. It is a nonsense.
And as a practicing Christian, what's your view of so-called gender ideology, the notion that you're assigned a gender at birth, that there are 100 genders, that some people are trapped in the wrong body?
First of all, you're not assigned a gender at birth. You're born a girl or a boy. You're actually born with one sex or the other. So talking about assigned suggests that somehow this is something artificial that can be just changed at will later on. Now, there's a very small number of people, and nobody would deny this, who do genuinely suffer from gender dysphoria, and sometimes they go through hugely painful medical procedures in order to give effect to that. But they are a very, very tiny minority. The overwhelming majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people are men or women, and that is it. And there is no choice in the matter.
I agree with you. And stay with me. Joan has called Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Joan.
Hello to both of you. I'm absolutely fed up of all this rubbish that's been instilled into our children. It's nothing but child abuse. Why don't they let children just have a childhood? No wonder that our teenagers are so stressed with anxiety and mental health problems. Children, I just can't understand why this policy is being fobbed off onto little ones. It's just not right. And as I say, I'm a Christian and I get fed up of it. But what also upsets me is the silence of the church.
Anne, your reaction to that? Do you think, for example, the Church of England and other faith leaders should take a stand against so-called gender ideology?
Well, I think they certainly should. They won't. They won't. The Church of England in particular is terrified of offending anybody. And it wants to incorporate absolutely every last ideology into its own teaching. So they won't do that. But I think that your caller there really nailed it when she said, that childhood should be childhood. And they shouldn't be burdened with these sorts of considerations. I mean, I went through the whole of my primary education without hearing anything about sex, about different family structures, but anything like that. I went through my primary education having fun in the playground and learning in the classroom. And that is what it should be about.
Well, Anne, you are a libertarian, as I am myself. And when you're 18, good luck to you. If you're going to change your name from Bob to Bridget, I won't stand in your way. And you wouldn't be a true conservative if you took any other view than that. Live and let live. The issue we've got is young people who have a lot of crazy ideas. And when I was about 7, I wanted to be a car. Now, that didn't play out very well because I'm afraid that I'm not very powerful. I've got no torque, I've got no brakes and no windscreen. But the bottom line is that, Joan there invoking the idea of child abuse in relation to this ideology. Is that too strong?
No, I don't think it's too strong. I think when you actually start helping small children, and I mean small children, to transition, that is a form of child abuse because every sensible adult knows they cannot possibly be in a position at that stage to take what will be a major life-changing decision. They just cannot be. You wouldn't let them take charge, for example, of the family budget, you would say, no, you simply don't have the experience. You wouldn't let them decide what is dangerous and what is not when they're playing. You wouldn't let them decide entirely what they could eat or what they could not. But for some reason, we're actually saying to small children, oh, you can decide to change something as fundamental as whether you're a girl or a boy. And it is, child abuse is fine. I'll buy that.
Joan, last word on this, your final thoughts?
Well, as I say, I just can't understand these politicians. Why are they pushing all of this agenda? It's just absolutely ridiculous. And as for giving puberty blockers to children as young as 8, it's horrendous. It really is.
Why do you think they are pushing this ideology, Joan?
I just don't know. I don't know whether the woke lobby is so strong now that these politicians are so weak. They're terrified of them. But this has got to stop.
Joan, I completely agree with you. And this is very un-Christian, this ideology. I would argue it's against Western values as well. What do you think motivates this movement? And I take on board absolutely what you said, that there are people, Anne, who do have gender dysphoria, and there are examples throughout history of people, men that have dressed up as women and felt they were female, and we, are very understanding towards those folk. But what is behind this seeming ideological drive, Anne, to basically dismantle the idea of two sexes?
Well, I think that very often behind these big drives, what you've actually got is a desire to undermine society as we know it. Now, Theresa May actually said in terms when the trans issue first started raising its head in this country, she actually said, oh, this is the most important thing. This was at a time when we were still trying to get Brexit. And people jump on the bandwagon and they want to be seen as modern, as inclusive, as tolerant. And they don't actually pause to think what this can mean in the longer term. Nobody paused to think that you could actually end up with a man in a woman's prison. I mean, it is such an unlikely scenario that people would have said, oh, rubbish, that won't happen. But of course, if you take that ideology forward, that is exactly what happens.
Anne, common sense as always. We love having you on the show. Have an excellent Friday and we will speak soon. My thanks to the fearless former government minister, broadcaster and Reform UK supporter, Anne Widdecombe. Donald Trump has been given the green light to sue the BBC. Have they got it coming? Have the corporation brought this on themselves? Here's a voice note from Dave.
Morning, Mark. Just putting a couple of pieces together here. So the TV licence goes up to £180 odd. The BBC are about to be sued for millions and millions of pounds. Could it be that the British public are going to have to pay for the BBC bias? So they know they're going to get it and we've got to pay, as usual.
You're so right, Dave. We always pick up the bill. Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said Britain has been colonised by immigrants. Did he make a mistake by apologising? That's next, 8:20 Talk Breakfast.
been in coalition with the Labour Party and we were in
No, but I meant coalition in Westminster with the Tories.
Yeah, it has happened before, but you know what? We won't know what's going to happen in 2028, 29 until we get there and we have the general election.
Yeah.
And speculation at this stage is just hot air.
Would you do it though? Would you? I mean, you've got more MPs than you used to have. You had a bit of a quiet wilderness few years, but you're back. The Lib Dems.
If we have more MPs, I would want to see us as the official opposition.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Labour are going to allow very young children at primary school, as young as 5 or 6 years of age, to socially transition. That means little Johnny is allowed to be called Joanna at primary school. Wild. Well, a reaction has come in from Linda in Stalybridge, who says, "Good morning, Mark. When I went to school in the 60s, in primary school, we had a dressing up corner. No one ever said if a boy put a dress on that he wanted to be a girl or push a pram or played with dolls, etc. It was playtime." Linda, brilliant common sense views. So Sir Jim Radcliffe has spoken out about the state of Britain, and he's apologised for saying that Britain has been colonised by immigrants. He doesn't apologise for the message, but some of the language involved. Was he wrong to apologise? Alp Mehmet is the chairman of Migration Watch UK. Good morning, Alp. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark. It's good to be with you.
It's very good to see you. I spoke to Anne Widdecombe earlier. It's always a treat to have her on the show. And
absolutely.
She cast a little doubt about Sir Jim's choice of language, but she approved the message. Do you share Anne's view that his language was clumsy or inappropriate or intemperate?
Well, Mark, we always get into this debate about the words used. Nigel Farage has been taken to task for referring to an invasion. Margaret Thatcher, going back many years, was taken to task for referring to being swamped.
Yes.
I'm not sure it's important, really. And I know that Sir Jim got his figures muddled and his timings a bit wrong. But there's absolutely no doubt that we've had huge masses of immigration over the last 20 years. He referred to 12 million, or he picked up on the figure 12 million increase in population. What we have had since 2012, there have been 12 million people coming here long term. 12 million people. Net migration in that time was around 4.5 million people. These are massive figures, and it's happening so quickly. That's the issue. Of the, I don't know, roughly up to 11.5 million people born, non-UK born, who are in the UK now.
Yeah.
Something like 40% of them arrived in the last 10 years. Now, is this something serious that we should take seriously, that we should really be concerned about? And I would argue, absolutely. To just look at the number of homes that are required for that number of people. In the year to mid-2024, there was 755,000 people added to our population in 1 year. That number of people require, something like 3 million, over 300,000 homes. I'm getting my figures mixed up this
you're
morning.
absolutely right about that, Alp. The figures are mind-boggling. Housing, roads, GP appointments, school places, reservoirs, energy supply. The list is endless of the demands that our exploding population have on our crumbling resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the point. But he used the word colonizing. I mean, what does the word colonizing mean? Come to settle in a country and establish political control over the native people in the country. That's what it means. Well, actually, in parts of London, other parts of the country, this has happened. Tower Hamlets, for example, an area that I know something about, that is now controlled by a party called Aspire. 3 members of that party were actually in Bangladesh campaigning for election in that country. So, yeah, I mean, what do we mean by colonizing the country? No, clearly, if you look at our parliament, that is not so at the moment. But the speed and scale of migration is such that at some point we are going to get to the point where the people, the ethnic minorities are actually roughly 50-50. That's going to happen in, early 2060s. But the 0 to 14 age group, that 50-50 point is going to arrive at something like 2041, 2042, depending on what happens to other factors.
15
like
years.
And deaths.
15 years from now.
15 years. That's 1 to 14. It's happening. That's the problem. No one, and even Jim is not saying stop immigration, all immigration.
No.
Maybe we should for a while. What he's saying is that the scale and speed is far too high and we can't afford it. It's costing us a fortune.
And why is it a problem if Indigenous Brits become outnumbered in their own country? Can you outline why that's an issue, Alp?
Well, you've just pointed to it in their own country. Look, when I arrived as a youngster, an 8-year-old in the mid-50s, my school, I was the only child that didn't speak English. I was the only child that was foreigner. If you go to the same school now, just about all the children in the particular school that I attended are either first or second generation migrants. I mean, that's just batty. If you go to, Japan or any other country, Nigeria, in the country that I worked in, I mean, people were proud to be part of their nation. They were part of a history. They were part of a heritage that the whole nation was founded on. If we are gradually going to import people who are going to be here, who having arrived recently, a short period of time, and they're in the majority, that is no longer the country that they have originally joined.
It's not Britain anymore, is it? Alp, stay with us if you can. Georgina has called Talk Breakfast. Good morning, Georgina. Regarding Sir Jim Ratcliffe's remarks, was it a case of wrong words, right message?
Well, I've never met Jim Radcliffe personally, so I'm in no way qualified to cast aspersions on his character. But as far as I'm concerned, Jim Radcliffe was absolutely right. And I think he was very tactful with his statement, and he should not have been asked by anyone, especially Keir Starmer, to apologise for telling the truth. As far as I'm concerned, when you have fighting-age men coming over in boats in their droves without their families, this is not a colonisation. This is an invasion, Mark, and I do not recognise our capital city anymore as it resembles a foreign land as far as I'm concerned. This is yet another appeasement for the Muslim constituencies by Keir Starmer. That's what I think. And, you know, everyone's saying, oh, well, Jim Ratcliffe shouldn't have an opinion because he lives in Monaco. Well, you know, Jim Ratcliffe lived here for a long time, and he's paid more taxes in this country than you can shake a stick at. He's a self-made man, and I say all power to him. The truth has always been the enemy of the socialist, Mark, and Starmer has proven this point beautifully time and again. Keir Starmer's DEI, his cultural cohesion experiment, has been the biggest division mechanism that this country's ever seen. Britain has most definitely been colonised, and 75% of the colonists are on benefits. The majority contribute nothing to our economy. They are economic drains that increase with each passing day. We need to give the government less power over our population, not more, because as far as I can see, they're not working on our behalf or in our country's best interest. And we are in no financial position to be benevolent to migrants that are coming or into our country. There's little wonder that we have no economic growth when the working classes, which is something that Keir Starmer knows nothing about and can't even define what a working class person is, go out to work to pay their taxes to keep these colonists and migrants in a manner that since they've been in the UK, they've become accustomed to, and allowing the influx of migrants since the Blair era has changed the very fabric of our nation. The majority of these migrants do not want to assimilate, Mark. They don't want to integrate into our culture, and a lot of them do not wish to learn the King's English. They want us to assimilate into their culture and their religion, and this is not acceptable to any patriotic British subject. Diversity, as far as I'm concerned, has proven not to be our strength. In fact, it's the Achilles heel of our society, and the sooner that this government realise that, the better we'll all be for it.
Georgina, thank you for a very powerful call. Do call me again soon. Al Mehmet, is diversity our strength?
It's our weakness, I believe. Look, last year, Sir Keir Starmer, he referred to our becoming an island of strangers. Now, did he apologise? I don't recall any apology from him. There was an indirect withdrawal of the comment, and only because it had echoes of something that Enoch Powell had said. But what he was saying is really not very different to what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has been saying.
And it was written, that line, Island of Strangers Out, was written by Morgan McSweeney, who's just been fired from the government.
Well, he's
probably because he spoke the truth
from the government.
He's retired, yeah, exactly.
No, but that is the point. The fact is that immigration, uncontrolled migration, mass immigration, is really changing our society and changing it rapidly. That's something that we should be concerned about, because not only is it changing it, but it's costing us an absolute fortune as well. So Jim Ratcliffe was really right to draw attention to this issue. And I know that there's been a lot of commentators and a lot of the media, not here and certain other channels, who have taken him to task. Oh, the figures were wrong. But this is what happens, that something blows up and then gradually people forget people in the media in particular forget the majority of people actually go along with what is being said. And they did when Sir Keir Starmer mentioned it. They've gone along with what Nigel Farage has been saying. They go along with what Georgina has said this morning, even though she may have got her figures a little wrong. But that's not the issue. It's the state of the country, the way that immigration is really continuing uncontrolled and changing our society.
Well, listen, it's been far too long, Alp. Really enjoyed your company this morning. Let's catch up very soon. Alp Mehmet is the chairman of Migration Watch UK. Here's a voice note from Lisa.
Morning, Mark. It's Lisa from Canterbury, talking about Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I mean, I'm sick to death of seeing that people are offended by things. If you don't like somebody's opinion, it actually doesn't matter, does it? Because it's still a right to free speech. And, you know, everything. Oh, people are so sensitive about everything. If you don't like it, don't listen. It's as simple as that. I'm sick to death of it all.
Lisa, I'm as sick to death of it as you are, and I will always use this platform to get your views out there and to represent the huge frustration that is within the country about the direction of travel and about a rapidly changing society that no one voted for. I was in Sainsbury's yesterday, and a very tall man, right, even taller than me, I'm 6'5". This guy was towering over me, and he walked towards me. I was in a quite woke bit of North London, so I thought he was going to clock me for my daily truth bombs, and he just quietly said, "What you're doing is very important." I felt humbled by that. What do? I will just tell you the truth. I'll just say it like I see it. There's no agenda. I can't be cancelled. They try to cancel me. It ain't going to happen. So, and that, by the way, is Dolan's dispatch in half an hour's time, right, 9 o'clock. I'm not pulling my punches. Well worth listening to and well worth watching. If you want to watch the show, head to YouTube, search Talk. Thanks for the calls and texts. Many more to come. Next up, Donald Trump wants to bankrupt the BBC. Will he succeed? That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:41 at Talk Breakfast. Dolan's dispatch coming at 9 o'clock. I recommend you take a listen. I'll be tackling the issue of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, his remarks about colonisation in relation to immigration in this country. Dolan's dispatch in 20 minutes' time. But first, Donald Trump has been given the go-ahead to sue the BBC for defamation, and he's looking for $10 billion. Let's get reaction from Robin Aitken, who's the author of the best-selling book, Can We Trust the BBC? Good morning, Robin.
Morning to you, Mark.
How do you see this playing out for the corporation?
Well, that's the problem, really. Who can see how it's going to play out? The problem is, as I see it, that the corporation is now entangled in the American legal system. And really the outcome of these various lawsuits is really unpredictable. And the problem there is that you might be talking about a hell of a lot of money, which the BBC is going to have to spend one way or the other. And that's regardless of whether actually there are damages paid to Mr. Trump. You know, American lawyers don't come cheap. And I've seen estimates that, you know, this could be upwards of $80 million. That's a hell of a lot of license fee money going down the drain in pursuit of the BBC trying to rescue its reputation in this instance.
Do you think that the BBC could have handled this differently and mollified the president in the aftermath of these revelations about the doctored clip on Panorama? Do you think they should have love-bombed the president to avoid this happening?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mark. I mean, the point is, you know, we've all watched Donald Trump, haven't we, from afar?
We know what he's like.
We do. And he's a thin-skinned man, you know, and I have actually a lot of regard for Trump. I think he's done many good things. But you'd have to say he's not someone who can, who easily takes a slight, and he holds a grudge. I think the BBC would have been well advised when this thing first came to light to, as you say, have love-bombed the president. They should have grovelled, really, a fulsome apology, making it plain that they regretted what had happened, and maybe offering some sort of token damages. I don't know, something, you know, not too token, but maybe $500,000 or something to a charity, something like that. That might have bought Trump off. But now, as it stands, the BBC, I have no way of knowing, you have no way of knowing, the BBC has no way of knowing how this is going to play out. And as I say, that could be very costly indeed.
Unfortunate headlines for the national state broadcaster to be in a legal battle with the leader of the free world. Clearly that edited clip was a huge oversight, a terrible mistake, and an example, arguably, of political bias. That said, is Trump's legal action a war on the free press?
No, I don't think so, actually. I mean, look, yes, the free press is important, and the BBC, of course, is an important part of our media landscape, and would be worse off, in my view, without the BBC being there altogether.
Yeah.
However, what I would say is this, Mark, that I'm a assiduous consumer of BBC News because actually I've made it my job really to be a critic of the BBC because I used to work for the BBC. I know how the organisation works. Now, ever since Trump came on the scene, which was back in 2016, the BBC has shown nothing but negativity towards him. Every report I've ever heard on the BBC about Trump has been accentuating the negative. There has been no fair reporting of Trump ever since he arrived on the scene, and that is because he stands for everything the BBC hates. And so this lawsuit is the culmination, I think that whether Trump has been a close observer of BBC output or not, I don't know, but I'm certain that those around him, many of his coterie of advisors and so on, will know the BBC is very biased against Trump. And this lawsuit is maybe a way of settling that score. And I think the BBC had this coming. I mean, the fact is, I don't think anyone can, with a straight face, argue that the BBC has been fair to Trump. It simply has not. And I mean, and this is true actually of many other issues, big issues, which the BBC has over decades been, you know, quite shamefully biased about. And I think, you know, maybe the chickens are coming home to roost on this. I don't think, by the way, that this, you know, the lawsuit that Trump has launched is asking for $10 billion damages. Now, I think that's a bit performative. I don't think that, even in the casinos of American courts, I doubt whether the BBC is going to be landed with a $10 billion cost. I think that's absurd. But it's perfectly possible that this thing goes through all its legal stages, and the BBC maybe at the end has to, maybe it's exonerated. I somehow doubt that, but even at the end, maybe there's notional damages. But even in that case, the BBC is likely to have spent tens of millions of dollars on trying to protect its reputation, when it would have been better, in my view, from the outset, to have fessed up.
Robin, a delight to have you on the show. Thank you for your valuable time. Robin Aitken is the author of Can We Trust the BBC? A former senior figure working in the BBC as well. Thank you to Robin Aitken for that. What do you think? Do the corporation have it coming? Do you support Trump's legal action against the BBC? Or is it a war on the free press? Let me know your thoughts. Next up, Labour want to enable primary school children as young as 5 or 6 to change their gender at school. We'll get reaction next. It's 8:44. This is Talk Breakfast.
If one of the victims was trans, you'd be all over this. The fact that it was a man who claimed he was trans, oh, shh, no one talk about it. No one talk about it.
What I'm saying is we were having a discussion about UK schools affirming students about their transness, about gender identity, about anything. Affirming them in their bodies, in their identities, just giving them the tools to understand themselves. And you bring up a mass murderer in Canada because they were trans. That is despicable. Come on.
It's just facts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:51 Talk Breakfast. Shout out to my incredible team. We have Nehar, who's directing our TV output. This is the radio and it's the telly as well. If you want to watch the show, just head to YouTube, search Talk, and here we are. It's a live show with all my brilliant guests that you can watch on TV. Also, my amazing call screener, the one and only Tommy, who's taking your calls 03444991000. The boss, Alicia, who's owning it in spite of very sore legs from marathon training. and engineer Sam, who's had 11 minutes of sleep in the last month because of 2 young children. Look at him, he's so fertile. I bet there's another one on the way. So much to get through. Jim Radcliffe, his remarks. Did he choose the wrong words? This is a voice note from Hannah.
Jim Radcliffe was right, and colonisation is the correct term, because 50 years ago, if you'd have said to someone, you're going to be invaded by people coming on boats illegally with no papers, they're going to change how you are able to speak and criticise, and teachers are going to go into hiding, and all of this, then yeah, that's what you'd call it. You'd call it an invasion and colonisation.
Hannah, you are entitled to deploy your own vocabulary, and thank you for an articulate voice note. We'll get back to that conversation at 9 a.m. for Dolan's Dispatch. But next up, Labour are opening the door to children at primary school changing their gender. Let's get reaction from a true personal hero of mine. Helen Joyce, broadcaster, author and the director of advocacy at Sex Matters. Helen Joyce, good morning. Welcome back to Talk Breakfast. What's your reaction to this move, the ability of primary school children to, in inverted commas, socially transition?
It's actually a really complex story. There's some good bits and some absolutely tragic, like fall at the last hurdle bit. So I'll tell you the good bit first, which is that this guidance has finally come out. It's in the statutory guidance about keeping children safe. That's new. So schools must obey it. And it's got some really good stuff in it, like that children cannot use opposite sex spaces, like must not, nowhere in any school, which is new and brilliant and a hard line. It says that schools must record children's sex accurately. No boy must be recorded as a girl. No girl must be recorded as a boy. And no secret social transitions that are started by the school. Schools must talk to parents and follow their lead. So that's the good stuff. The bad stuff is they've got this phrase social transition in it and they don't even define it. Now, most things that a child might mean or their parents might mean by social transition are things now that are banned. It would be things like the school recording you as the opposite sex or allowing you to use the opposite sex's spaces, but they're still talking about it as something that might be possible. And so they, I think, suggesting that there will be some special children that we talk about in an exceptional way, like we know this is a boy, but we don't call him a boy. We ask the children to use opposite sex pronouns and so on. And we think at Sex Matters that that's probably in part because of the puberty blockers trial. I don't think that trial is possible unless you treat a few kids as an exception to the general sex-based rules. So I would say like 70% cheers for having got as far as they have. And then, my goodness, you can't stop here. You've got to go the whole way. We have to talk about boys as boys and girls as girls if we're going to keep children safe at school.
Most definitely. And children at primary school should not be exposed to the idea that you can change your sex. A, because my view and your view is that you can't. But B, it's just not appropriate at that age to even go there.
Oh, I couldn't say it better myself. Absolutely. It's not like other belief systems. A friend of mine was saying, you know, when you're talking to primary school kids, there's all sorts of beliefs in the classroom. You might say, oh, you know, such and such is Jewish and Friday afternoons are special for Jewish people and that's why such and such isn't here this Friday or something like that. Completely fine. You know, age appropriate, correct, not imposing one person's views or beliefs on another. But how can you say, you know, Tommy doesn't like being a boy, so we've all got to call him Tabitha, and he still is really a boy, but we've got to pretend because it'll make him very sad otherwise, so let's all say she. Like, you just can't do it. It's not possible. Schools are rules-based environments, and you write rules and say rules and enforce rules with words. So you have to be accurate with your words.
Indeed. This is the introduction of trans ideology by the back door, isn't it?
Oh, it's already there in schools. For a decade, schools have been indoctrinating children on this, I'm sorry to say. Not just schools, of course, online, influencers, and also lobby groups that have been going into schools.
Netflix, children's entertainment shows, cartoons, the list goes on.
Absolutely, and groups like Stonewall and Mermaids as well, mistraining teachers to think that this is something that doesn't affect any other child, it just affects that child. So the government has started a de-radicalisation programme, is the way I would say it. But, you know, we actually need to de-radicalise a whole generation of teachers because they have been doing this for a decade. The government isn't introducing anything here. it's unfortunately not doing enough to stop it, because it's gone so far that only total clarity will stop it at this point.
Briefly, Helen, I wish we had longer, but can I ask you, what if a little boy or a little girl at primary school has gender dysphoria? They genuinely feel that they're in the wrong body, they identify as an opposite sex, and there are those people in our society. Do they not deserve empathy? Do they not deserve special treatment?
Of course they deserve empathy. There are lots of children in school who have all sorts of situations. There are school refusers, there are kids who are anorexic, there are kids who have severe anxiety. Schools are used to dealing with children who have special needs of various sorts, and they accommodate them with things like special plans, you know? It's just the same as that. But the thing is, you actually can't change sex. It can't be done. So the request is to make everybody else lie about your sex. And that's simply a bridge too far. It's an imposition on everyone else. I should say one other thing that's really good about this guidance is, for the first time, we are seeing the expression, all the other children in school. They keep saying that throughout, and I really feel that the government has gone like 70% of the way there. It's a consultation. We've 10 weeks to write and give our views to it. I do ask your listeners to do so. Explain to them that no child can change sex and that this has to be written down in black and white.
Do you know how people can access that consultation document?
It's online. I don't have the URL to hand, but if you Google it, it's a 10-week consultation on keeping children safe in education.
You're recommending that my viewers and listeners contribute to that. What we're going to do, producer Alicia is going to find those details. We'll give them to our audience. Lovely to see you, Helen. We'll catch up soon. Helen Joyce is the Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters. Time now for a bit of the beautiful game.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Lloyd Canfield is the Chelsea FC reporter at The Sun. Have Arsenal, Lloyd, messed up their lines? Have they stumbled? Are they going to bottle it for the Premier League?
I said to you last time I came on, you asked me if I thought Arsenal were definitely going to win the league, and I said never put your money on Arsenal. So, look, they haven't messed it up yet. They're a brilliant, brilliant team, and Brentford is a really difficult place to go, as they found out last night. Brentford are an excellent team as well. A really tough place to go, but the gap has diminished to just 4 points, and you don't want Manchester City chasing you in that situation, because they've got so much quality. And the key thing being that Manchester City know how to handle that title race. I'm not sure Arsenal do just yet. I'm not sure that Arsenal have got what it takes to take it all the way and not crumble at the final hurdle.
Most definitely. Well, of course, if they lose their next game and Man City win, then it goes down to 1 point, and then it gets very squeaky bum, doesn't it? Lloyd, what were the other big sort of headlines from the Premier League yesterday in terms of the matches?
Well, I think the biggest thing was not one of the matches, and I think you're going to speak about it in your next segment, is the Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Manchester United comments. I mean, we found out yesterday that a lot of the players are actually really unhappy with how he's come out and spoken. Not only that, but a lot of the fans. The club released a statement last night saying that they're an inclusive club and they're proud to be represented by all sorts of different people. So that was really the biggest story of yesterday.
Well, a massive, massive story. And a quick word on the Ukrainian Olympic star thrown out of the competition for wearing a helmet that featured war dead from the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, a bit of a bizarre one, if you ask me. I think it's another one of these politics and sport where they tend to cross over, and people tend to have very strict views on whether they should or shouldn't. I mean, this is a tribute to people that have been killed. I didn't see it as anything too extreme, but obviously the people higher up have a different view to what I do. Well, I share your view, and it's been condemned by Zelensky. Lovely to see you, Lloyd. Have an excellent weekend. Look forward to the Sun's coverage of all the big games over the weekend. Much more to come. Dolan's Dispatch is next.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 9. Happy Friday, one and all. Your weekend starts here. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan with you today and tomorrow. I've got Sunday off and I'm with you all of next week in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle, so do join me. Breaking this morning, Nigel Farage backs Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but is one of Britain's richest men right that immigration has colonised Britain? Big Ange strikes again as Angela Rayner blasts Starmer's pubs tax. But as it's revealed, Labour MPs want to reverse the government's tougher immigration rules. Will Angela Rayner throw Britain's borders open if she becomes Prime Minister? Drill, baby, drill. Britain must exploit its vast oil and gas reserves. Not the words of Donald Trump, but former PM Tony Blair. So is the push for net zero finally running out of steam? And a campaign group has caused uproar by suggesting job seekers should spend several hours a week picking up litter. So is that cruelty or common sense? Now, my priority is getting your opinions on the national radio and television airwaves. You can call the show. Tommy's on the phones this morning. 03444991000. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222 or leave us a voice note. So much to get through. As the saying goes, let's talk. You can listen, of course, on air, which is via DAB+, in-app and online, or you can watch the show. We are now a TV show as well, so head to YouTube, search Talk and up we pop. So much to get through, and we will kick off this hour at 9:05 with Dolan's Dispatch. Captain Free Speech strikes again with the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, in another characteristically Orwellian move, demanding that one of the country's richest and most successful men, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, apologises for the outrageous new crime of telling the truth. Now, Sir Jim Ratcliffe should not have apologised. Just as wealthy and powerful figures in the arts like J.K. Rowling and Ricky Gervais have used their platform to mock, belittle and challenge the worst excesses of woke ideology, so we should be grateful to a great British success story like Sir Jim Ratcliffe for calling out a rapidly changing country that precisely no one voted for. Starmer's desperate post on X after a desperate week is a perfect example of what the left always do. They punish you for saying the true bit out loud. Anyone outside the comfortable, smug elite that dominate our public and media institutions will tell you that immigration is far too high and has diminished job prospects, living standards and the economy. Anyone that lives in the real world will tell you that mass immigration has overwhelmed our already creaking infrastructure. Housing, transport, reservoirs, energy supply, the NHS, school places, the list goes on. And mass immigration, both legal and illegal, has diluted our culture and values and most egregiously has made us less safe, particularly women. Like Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the statistics don't lie. The statistics don't care about your feelings and they don't fit the Prime Minister's flimsy and counterfeit social narrative. Talk of colonisation itself may have been a little intemperate, may have been a little clumsy, maybe a little inflammatory. But it's thanks to Sir Jim's bold language that we are now having this conversation, just as Suella Braverman sparked a national conversation when she invoked the language of invasion when describing the small boats crisis. Now, all the usual suspects clutched their pearls yesterday And they're clutching their pearls over what Radcliffe has said. Spare me the dishonest virtue signalling from Starmer and the perennial Prime Minister in waiting, Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester, whose progressive worldview that multiculturalism is an unalloyed social strength and that immigration is an unalloyed benefit to our economy, those views are a million miles away from the views of the vast population. Now, this will be all too apparent at the next election when the diversity is our strength crowd are hounded out of office in favour of an administration that believes in national cohesion, national identity, British values, strong border control, and a country that lives within its means. Radcliffe was right about the cult of welfareism too. 9 million working-age people swinging the lead at home, watching Loose Women and chowing down Domino's pizza is the road to ruin. And he'll get pelters for that as well, again, because it's the truth. Now, the metrics of Sir Keir Starmer's post on X spoke volumes, because his virtue signalling post achieved several million views, fine, but for all the wrong reasons. Several million views, yes, but just a few thousand likes. Now, in social media terms, they call that death by ratio. And the Prime Minister and the wider progressive left will be ratioed to extinction at the next election. The multicultural experiment, in which integration is neither expected nor required, has utterly failed. And vast, unchecked immigration has provably made us poorer, less safe and more divided. So I salute Sir Jim Radcliffe for saying the true bit out loud. Not long ago, he called out the madness of net zero. History will judge this brave billionaire very kindly. I don't care if he lives in Monaco and he's a tax exile. He has shown that he's a true patriot, perhaps all the more so, given the fact that his wealth insulates him from the consequences of Britain's catastrophic immigration experiment. Now, the establishment want to show the Manchester United co-owner the red card for his honest comments. They want to relegate him and send him down the tunnel for an early bath. Clumsy footwork maybe, but Sir Jim has hit the back of the net. 0344 499 1000, your reaction to today's Dolan's Dispatch. It's all about your opinions. Keep them coming. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. There is such a strong feeling out there in regard to the direction of the country, a country that people feel they did not vote for. Wayne in Rugby has said, good morning, Mark, after Starmer's outburst at Sir Jim Radcliffe. He should have told him to stick his comments where the sun doesn't shine. It would have been so hilarious to see Starmer absolutely melt down. Jim Radcliffe should not have apologised. He was 100% correct, and holding the position he does, he has nothing to lose, especially because most people agree with him. Mike says Jim Radcliffe isn't right or wrong. It's just an opinion, and he's entitled to have that. Well, let's get reaction now from one of the most experienced journalists in the country, former national newspaper editor and now columnist at The Sun, David Wooding. Good morning, David.
Morning, Mark.
Well, we have to thank Sir Jim Radcliffe for sparking a national conversation. Wherever you are on the political spectrum, it's a conversation we need to have.
Absolutely. And when you used the word own goal a minute ago, what we forgot, the own goal was really by Keir Starmer. Why did the Prime Minister need to get involved in this? Somebody in the world of football expresses an opinion. Let the Manchester United stars who have had their say about it, most of them migrants themselves, and the fans maybe on the board. Let it be a club issue, not bring in politics into it. All Keir Starmer has done is to show his own weakness on that issue by highlighting it.
Most definitely, and we've seen a very different position, haven't we, taken from the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, David. If we can, Sam, when you're ready, do you mind if we fire up Nigel Farage's reaction to Sir Jim Radcliffe's remarks? Take a listen.
Well, he said that our population has gone up from 58 million to 70 million, and that with 9 million people of working age on benefits, we don't need mass migration. He said much of the country had been colonised by immigrants. Now, that word was a controversial word, and he said, OK, if you don't like the word, we'll tone it down. But just think about this. You ask yourself why public services have diminished. You ask yourself why. Rents have gone through the roof. The population explosion has done that. And then you look at parts of London, for example, where the road names, the underground signs, aren't just in English, they're in a foreign language as well. 1 million people living in this country don't speak any English at all. 4 million people living in this country barely speak passable English. And that's the point that he was making.
Well, David, Nigel Farage has raised half an eyebrow about the choice of words, but fully backs the message.
Yes, and of course, Jim Ratcliffe was speaking from the heart, and he was, obviously, he accepts he's made a bit of a clangor in his use of language, and of course he's not a professional like we are as journalists.
And he's not a politician.
No, he's not a politician. So it's quite easy to make the mistake. But most of the contents he said was perfectly reasonable. He may have got one or two little facts wrong, but he is actually striking a chord with a large proportion of the population who do feel that something has to be done about migration. It's no good the bleeding hearts on the left saying this is outrageous. It's not outrageous. People are entitled to an opinion, and that's all he expressed. And it was a reasonable opinion, apart from the use of language, of course. And he's apologised for that. So,
some of your many millions of readers at the Sun newspaper and my audience of viewers and listeners will take the view that a tax-exiled billionaire is more in touch with the feelings of the British people than our own Prime Minister.
Of course, that's an argument the critics are using, that he doesn't even live in this country, earns a lot of money and is away. But of course, a lot of the people who go and support Manchester United will probably agree with what he said, because they will be seeing that the hard effects of mass uncontrolled migration. The footballers, like Jim Ratcliffe and like politicians, are cosseted, living in their nice big houses, and in fact probably using the fruits of cheap foreign labour to clean their homes and mow their lawns and do all the other tasks for them. Whereas the people who pay what's left of their meagre income every week to go and support their club will find that they can't get the children in their school of their choice. The waiting lists for the NHS are high. They're paying all these taxes and they don't seem to be getting anything in return for it.
Well, that's right, and I know that some figures on the left have criticised Sir Jim Ratcliffe for his wealth and the fact that he lives in Monaco. I would argue that makes him even more of a patriot. He hasn't got skin in the game. He himself is insulated from the consequences of Britain's open borders experiment, and yet still he feels he needs to speak out. He's not making money from this, and therefore I just wonder whether it's quite admirable that he's decided to use his platform to say what he thinks is happening to the country.
Yes, absolutely. And again, we saw this back in the Blair years when first the floodgates opened. Am I allowed to say that? When at first they allowed more migration, or the controls were loosened.
And Blair went far beyond what the EU required.
Absolutely.
By way of an open border to the east.
Absolutely. And of course there was this man, Andrew Neither, the advisor, who said, let's rub the noses of the right wing in diversity by letting in lots of migrants. Now, of course, whenever we challenged that at the time, and I was a political journalist at that time, I remember Tony Blair and his people saying, we've got to be very careful what we say here, which was a coded way of saying, be careful, we'll accuse you of racism. Yeah. And it was dampened down any criticism of it. And it's going on now still. And most people can see it with their own eyes and look around their own communities and see that it's hard to get housing, it's hard to get things, not because we are racist, but because there are more people competing for the services. And also, of course, we've got all these people on benefits here, British people, because there's no skills, the benefits are too high. So it's a mixture of mass migration, over generous benefit system, and also the fact that there's no skills program in here, no apprenticeships.
And concerns about the recent levels of legal and illegal immigration are shared by Brits of all ethnicities. This is not a question of racism. It's not even a question, David, I would suggest, of being anti-immigration. People have been concerned about the scale of it and the type of folk that are coming.
Absolutely. And when you go out on the election campaign and you go to some of these towns and villages outside London and you see them where there's a large ethnic community, the people in the ethnic community are most vocal about migration. They don't want any more people coming in, and that's the big problem.
Well, most definitely. I mean, that's the issue, isn't it? I had Lubna Zaidi, who's a former Apprentice star and a British entrepreneur. Her parents are both foreign born, and they're furious about the direction of the country and the makeup of it, the impact on the economy. The other thing we've got, what we need, don't you think, David, is more of an evidence base when it comes to immigration, whereby we actually, as a country, behave more like a PLC, more like a corporation, and go, look, we are going to recruit the best from around the world. Wasn't that the promise of Brexit? That we weren't going to close the border, but we were going to be discerning about who comes and make sure they make a contribution. Because I think that the public aren't necessarily entirely aware of the enormous costs of not just illegal immigration, but legal immigration too. Do you remember those statistics about a year ago came from the ONS? And it was the idea that if a low-skilled immigrant comes to work in a care home or the NHS in this country, a fruit picker, you name it, notwithstanding the skills gap that they will be filling, they will still be a net cost to the taxpayer in the course of their lifetime.
Yes, this is a myth that that is propelled by the pro-migration lobby, which is that that they contribute to the economy. A lot of people coming here and they bring their spouses and their children along and other members of the family, and they seem to claim more over the period that they're here than they do pay in taxes in many cases. That's because we're not picking and choosing who's allowed in. We do need people. The other thing, Mark, is you always hear people saying, I was treated in the NHS with a life-threatening condition. All the nurses, all the doctors who treated me were migrants. Without them, I wouldn't be here. Valid thing to mention. But why is that? Because we're not training enough of our own doctors, and we are taking people from foreign countries whose own health service is suffering as a result of that. We've got lots of people going through medical school who we can train and put in the NHS, but we seem to be taking them from abroad. And in other places, I think, going back to the Blair years, it was used to undercut the unions to bring in cheap foreign labour from, in some cases, the eastern parts of Europe, and that will bring down the wages, not by taking on the unions.
Most definitely. Derek is in Manchester. Good morning, Derek. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Morris. Oh, sorry, it's not Morris Minor, is it? It's Mark.
Oh, yeah, you could call me anything you like. I've had a lot worse, Derek.
Well, you said you wanted to identify as a car.
Well, I love that. I love that. Listen, you got me laughing, Derek. What do you think about Sir Jim Ratcliffe? Was he right to apologise?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, the thing is, what's even worse than that is the fact that our beloved Prime Minister asked him to apologise. Because why should he be asking Jim Ratcliffe to apologise for speaking the truth when everything he says is a pack of lies? But not only that, shouldn't Keir Starmer be apologising for not having a rape gang inquiry and leaving it to Rupert Lowe? Shouldn't he be apologising for not prosecuting Jimmy Savile all those years ago? Should he not be apologising for why he worked with a bench solicitor to prosecute soldiers? He should also be apologising for why he gave away the Chagos Islands, along with £30 billion, and he should be explaining who got the backhanders for that deal, because I'm pretty sure that a deal like that there must have been some brown envelopes changing hands somewhere.
Fair point, Derek. Thanks for a great call. David, before we let you go, can you tell me about the sort of the political health of the Prime Minister at the moment? He's dodged a bullet, hasn't he? The coup didn't quite happen
absolutely
last week. So where are we at now?
He's got a bit of a breathing space. I think 2 weeks today, when we know the result of the Gorton and Denton by-election, that might be when it's toast for him. But of course, you can see that yesterday we had Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham out saying that for instance, we should cut VAT for pubs, the minimum wage is suffering them, and in fact energy costs, all issues caused by this government who putting up taxes and inflating energy costs. They're staking their claim and cozying up to the to that industry and getting the message out there. So what I think we're seeing now is a phony leadership battle ahead of what really happens. They're all jockeying for position, and it's quite interesting. I thought that she was Angela Rayner was with the nighttime economy. And in fact, for Keir Starmer, it's more of a nightmare economy with 0.1% growth announced yesterday, which is minuscule.
Well put, and it's classic Angela Rayner with her populist touch to call out the hospitality industry and the importance of supporting pubs. This is a woman, and notwithstanding her current tax issues, has got her finger on the pulse. A bit like Boris Johnson, she's a Heineken politician that reaches the other parts others don't.
Absolutely.
Or was it Hofmeister?
Get your beers mixed up. But of course, yeah, what's happening for Keir Starmer now is that he is a hostage to his MPs. Apart from Angela Rayner and Andy Burnham saying that dictating how they want policy, you've also got the left. I think there were 35 MPs yesterday who called for him to soften his stance on immigration, which is of course what we were just talking about a minute ago. And Keir Starmer, remember, famously, another reason he should have taken on Jim Radcliffe, he famously said that Britain risked becoming an island of strangers. So hang on a minute, where is he now? He's changed his stance, and they're all wanting him to, so he is going to have to do exactly what his MPs want in order to stay in place.
Two big hurdles, Gorton and Denton by-election. Then we also have the small matter of the May elections.
Yeah.
If the assumption is that Starmer doesn't survive the summer, do all roads lead to Angela, do you think, David?
At the moment, for Andy Burnham, I mean, I was trying to decode what happened yesterday. You had Burnham and Rayner on the same platform. Was that a dream ticket of Burnham as leader and Angela Rayner as deputy? I think Angela Rayner really thinks it's the other way around, if anything. But of course, you know, Wes Streeting's been accused of manoeuvring as well. So there is, and this is going to happen. So look, even if he survives to the end of the year, we're going to see more and more of this, of these MPs, senior MPs who fancy their chances as leader, coming out and saying what they think. And this is going to be the backdrop to the rest of Keir Starmer's leadership, no matter how long that lasts.
David, a privilege to have you in the studio.
Pleasure.
David Wooding, former National Newspaper editor, columnist at The Sun newspaper. See you very soon, David. Here's a voice note from Jamie on the comments of Sir Jim Radcliffe.
I completely agree with Sir Jim Radcliffe. He speaks the truth. Maybe what he said was a little clumsy using that word. But why is it that he's been thrown to a dog since the comment? Why is it that when people have an opinion that we are made to be far-right, racist, wrong?
Good to see you.
There you go. My thanks to David Wooding. Listen, folks, so much more to come. Listen, what we're going to do next, right? Angela Rayner may well be Britain's next Prime Minister. Will she open the floodgates and reverse Shabana Mahmood's changes to immigration rules? So much more to get through. I'll be speaking to a leading former politician. He's a former politician, which means he'll be honest. This is Talk Breakfast. It's 9:26.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, it is 9:29, and this from John in Bury. Good morning, Mark. Sir Jim Ratcliffe should not need to apologise for his comments. We should take his advice on board. He hasn't made himself a billionaire by sitting on the fence. We should be grateful for billionaires like Sir Jim, who create jobs and contribute enormously to the economy. At the end of the day, he doesn't need to do what he does. He can go anywhere in the world and have an easy life. I'm just a builder, and I get it why we need people like Jim. The establishment should learn from the guy. John, you're not just a builder. It is one of the most noble professions out there. Let's get reaction now from a former Conservative MP, the author of The New Total War, from child abduction to cyber attacks and drones to disinformation, Russia's conflict with Ukraine and the West, Bob Seeley. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning to your listeners.
Lovely to have you on the show. By the way, how's the book doing, and has it sparked an important conversation about what's happening in Ukraine?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, the book is doing well, actually. It's selling well, hopefully going into paperback later this year. And I wrote it because not enough people know about Russia's new style of war, but also why it's a style of war that's going to be used by authoritarian powers and dictatorships to challenge Western nations like ourselves and the United States. So it sparked good conversation and it's selling well, so thank you for asking.
Do you think we will get, Bob, some form of a peace deal this year?
My gut feeling is probably not, and the reason why the Russians have started the negotiations is that they needed to head off US sanctions, but they're also using it as a front in the war effectively to divide Ukrainians, to divide Americans, to divide Americans, to divide Europeans, to divide people from each other. So for me, I think it's a means of manipulating people. I don't think they're necessarily interested in peace yet.
Does Donald Trump deserve credit for putting a tiger in the tank when it comes to peace negotiations, or is he selling out Ukraine, do you think?
Okay, look, the problem with that question, Mark, is if there is a peace deal, then he's been proved right. But I think it's unlikely that he will be. I have no doubt that President Trump is sincere about peace, and we should give him credit for that. Do I think he's been played, or do I think some of his advisors are being played by the Russians? I'm afraid I do.
And there's some dark stuff happening in Ukraine. I mean, can you tell us a bit about the child abduction in particular?
Yeah, I mean, if you go there now, the most striking thing about being in Kiev, and I do go there pretty much most months, is that there's no electricity and there's very little. If you don't have a generator, you're probably going to get electricity from the grid from maybe between 2 and 8 hours a day maximum. And it is a very, very cold and dark city at the moment, and people and civilians are suffering. But this is all part of Russia's techniques. They needed to, they want to break the will of the Ukrainian people. I don't think it's going to work. It didn't work with us when the Germans tried it during the Blitz. But that's all part of Putin's theory of war, that if he can destroy civilian morale, if he can break the economy, then he can, use that, and he can align that with his manipulations in the West, and he can align that with making very, very slow progress on the battlefield, and it might just give him the victory that he wants, and it might just sort of collapse Ukrainian society in a year, maybe, or 2 years' time.
May God forbid. Bob, let me ask you about the recent comments of Sir Jim Ratcliffe, a very accomplished Brit, a billionaire, one of the richest men in the country, and he's spoken to Sky News saying that immigration has colonised the country. He's since apologised for use of language, but not the message. Why have the Conservatives been so quiet on this? I'm just looking at Kemi Badenoch's X feed, and there isn't a word on this subject.
I don't know. You'll have. I'm afraid to say I don't know.
She's not your boss anymore, is she?
No, but I mean, Chris Phillips. Okay, Chris Phillips has normally been quite vocal on this. If you're asking me my opinion, I'm very happy to give it.
Yes, go for it.
I'm not quite sure I can guess the opinions of others. Look, I mean, you can, whether you argue about the language or not, fundamentally what the left are doing is what they always do, which is attack somebody either personally or for their use of language as a way of avoiding the substance of the debate. And the substance of the debate is that people in this country for several decades now, well, certainly 2 decades, have thought that immigration, mass immigration, is way, way too high. Now, rather than deal with that issue, the left want to attack people who talk about this, especially in ways, whether you like it or not, that grab the public attention, as Jim Ratcliffe's comments did. So rather than play the topic and answer the topic, they're trying to play the man, get him to back down, humiliate him, get him to apologise. And this has now been going on for years. And, you know, as all your callers show, and as your previous guest you had on, people are fed up with this. And people want to talk about the substance of the debate, which is that mass immigration is proving to be socially divisive and economically extremely painful for this country, and nobody's supported it. And look, I'm married to an immigrant. My mum was an immigrant, but that doesn't mean that you support mass immigration. Mass immigration is damaging this country and has to come to an end, and the Labour Party will not bring it to an end.
And I say that as the son of Irish immigrants myself, Bob. It's about the scale and it's about who comes. And the promise of Brexit is that we would have the world's finest. That hasn't played out, but we can hope in the future it does. Speaking of playing out, Bob, what's your estimation of the position of the Prime Minister at the moment? Do you think he can hang on this year, or do you think his departure from high office is now inevitable?
I mean, it's a great question. I presume, as far as I can see, he's a dead man walking. They could have got rid of him on Monday, or they could have forced him out by mass resignation. They didn't. And I think, looking around, Burnham doesn't want him to go now because he can't get in. Rayner doesn't want him to go now because she's still under investigation for her tax. Ed Miliband seems to be sitting on the fence and deciding. Wes Streeting seems to have bottled it by refusing to resign earlier this week. So I think they're all building up their leadership campaigns. Maybe Miliband not, if he's not going to run. They're all building their leadership campaigns up. And it doesn't suit anyone for Starmer to be forced out now. They didn't realise quite how catastrophic the Mandelson affair was going to be. And, you know, I remember in Parliament, when I was still in Parliament, the amount of people who were focused on Mandelson was pathetically small, even after the Financial Times came out with the revelations about Epstein. I was staggered. When I tried to raise it on the BBC, the wall of silence, the disinterest that I would get back from BBC reporters and senior journalists was absolutely staggering. You know, it's almost like there was this vow of omerta around Mandelson. That you couldn't talk about him, even when he was up to his neck in stuff that he shouldn't be. Somehow you could not talk about Peter Mandelson. And even then, at the time, he was a senior advisor to Starmer when the initial revelations about him staying with Epstein in New York after Epstein was, or, you know, during or after Epstein was in prison. I mean, it was pretty remarkable and pretty depressing. So it's not before time that Mandelson has gone. But what was bizarre was how little interest in the media there was back when this first came out. And that was in the build-up to the last election. I presume it was because the mainstream media was too busy trashing the Tories and didn't want to damage Labour's story. But looking back at it now, it was pretty depressing.
Well, I agree. I think the Mandelson scandal is very much on the political and media establishment. You're right to call that out. Bob, briefly, if you can, if the Prime Minister were to resign or be hounded out of office, do all roads lead to Angela Rayner? Because she strikes me as the Boris figure of the Labour movement. In other words, a populist politician that has cut through with the public. Do you think it's inevitable that if Starmer goes, she replaces him?
I don't think anything's inevitable in politics, Mark, but I think she's the most likely at the moment. But the most likely at the moment in politics and the person to get it are very often two different things. If Miliband was persuaded to run, he is probably a little bit more popular with the rank and file. He will seem to be a safer pair of hands, and Rayner, with her tax affairs, has damaged herself. So at the moment, she's more popular than Burnham. Well, she can win when Burnham can't because he's not even an MP, and she's more popular with the rank and file than Wes Streeting. But whether she would beat Miliband if he then decided to run is another matter.
Thanks, Bob. Bob Seeley, former Conservative MP and the author of the best-selling The New Total War, From Child Abduction to Cyber Attacks and Drones to Disinformation, Russia's Conflict with Ukraine and the West. I love speaking to these ex-politicians because they can be honest. They've got huge experience, huge knowledge, and no skin in the game, which means you get closer to the truth. Thank you to Bob for that. More to come, folks. Jim Radcliffe, was he right to apologise for his comments? It's 9:38. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Let's have a look at your comments. Listen to this from an unnamed listener. Former MPs and sacked MPs quite mouthy after the event. Useless whilst in post, just taking the money on the gravy train. And Sharon says, hi Mark, regarding illegal immigration, everyone is forgetting. We've got to stop the illegals and someone needs to do something about it. Sonny in Reading says, well done Bob Seeley, speaking the truth. And this from an unnamed texter who says, good morning, Mark, great show. Debate is vital in democracy because it ensures accountability, tests policy and forces public reasoning over violence. It transforms passive citizens into active participants, exposing voters to diverse viewpoints and enabling informed decisions. It also prevents the tyranny of the majority by allowing minority views to be heard. Why is the PM and many of the Labour MPs trying to silence Sir Jim Radcliffe and end debate? Debate is vital in democracy because it ensures accountability, etc. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. Well, thank you for that. Nigel was the texter there. What a beautifully written message that is. Kevin, Southampton. Donald Trump is suing the BBC. Kevin says, good morning, Mark. The BBC deserves everything it gets. Mike in Lincoln, good morning, Mark. As per Jim Radcliffe, before diversity became our strength, there was less crime, better wages, affordable housing, better healthcare, rigorous education, better social cohesion and integration. No fixation on anyone talking about immigration being a racist. We were confident as a nation, and way back then, grooming just meant personal hygiene. Mike, another beautifully written text, I've got to say. So much more feedback to get through, but can we have a look at today's Sun newspaper? A devastating headline. Another royal bombshell. Andy Girl flown to UK on Epstein's Lolita Express. Pressure is mounting on police to launch a sex trafficking probe into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor amid claims a woman was flown in on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet and sneaked into Buckingham Palace. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown said 90 flights on Epstein's so-called Lolita Express came into the UK carrying girls from around the world. He called it by far the biggest scandal of all. Let's speak now to one of the finest royal journalists in the country, Angela Levin. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
more bad headlines for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, with the worrying suggestion that some of his activities involving these young women may have happened on royal property.
Yes, I think most of it has been. They would come into the back door, as it were, and they would be told to say it's Mrs. Wait a minute.
Well, they had a code name, did they? Some special shorthand.
They had a code name. I'll see it in a minute. Mrs. Windsor will arrive shortly. Please let her in and show her up. That's where one of these girls would go in.
So wait a minute, Angela, hold fire there for a second. We might be talking about a young woman potentially trafficked from overseas into the UK, maybe from Russia or Romania or somewhere else, and they're given the nickname Mrs. Windsor.
That's so the staff would let her in. But it is absolutely disgusting, because they never checked what any of these girls were. They were from 18, just 18 upwards, but there would be sometimes loads and loads of them. And Epstein asked him once whether, are you still, happy? Would you like some more playtime? He says, yes, please. So then the whole another load go through. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. And the late Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, he thought something was going very wrong. And he tried very hard to get it going, just to find out what it was. And nobody took any notice. The police wouldn't do anything. No one would do anything. And he was very worried that they were coming in this private jet, because you don't know who can come here and make an effect. It was called, as you said, the Lolita Express, and it's completely disgusting. If the Queen was away, the late Elizabeth, he would invite girls to go into the Buckingham Palace and have a meal. And they were going very quietly and hoping that she wouldn't know. I mean, can you believe such a thing? And it's too shocking to remember, actually. I've read it twice and I just can't believe it. There's got another, was a Romanian model from Russia, early 20, and was called Perfect.
And super cute.
Super cute, yes. And another one called Irina, who was paid $5,000 by Epstein in 2010. Now, one of the most dreadful things about it is that in 2010, Andrew said that he was having no more friendship with Epstein because it wasn't right, and it was all that. And he would just go to America and tell him. And people say, well, why don't you just send him an email? No, he wanted to go there. And how long are you going to stay? Just 2 days. He stayed there 9 days. And if you saw a certain amount of film there, he was opening doors in and out where young girls were coming. Now, you don't know exactly what he did with those young girls, but if you're going to say to somebody, I don't really want to have any more companionship with you, and then you stay there 9 days, and he actually wanted to stay on, apparently, from what we've been told. It just turns your stomach, doesn't it?
It does. Andrew denies the allegations against him, but if these Epstein files are voracious and accurate, then it becomes abundantly clear that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is a twisted and wicked man.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think this is a huge shock for the king. It must be quite unbelievable that his brother would do something like that. And Sarah was also involved with it. And apparently they say Beatrice and Eugenie were as well. So there is this feeling that they can all be shunted out. And I don't know what the king can do. I mean, I think he should make some sort of speech, but he has to be very careful, because if he says anything, if there is a court, and the person who's trying to keep Andrew okay can say, well, you know, his brother has affected a no-go because he said something about his brother. And this is what he claims. So you have to be very careful. You can't say somebody's done something before they've actually done it, or the police have done anything about it. But I don't know how the king can manage this. It could make him very ill, because the shock of that and the cunningness of his brother creeping round all the wonderful buildings with the girls for fun is just too terrible. They all went to one station, that was Stansted Airport, because they agreed never to put anything on who was there and what's going on. So they would go to the airport, and it was all from there round into the back doors. How can anybody be like that when they've got young children and a wife there? Well, they stopped having, she wasn't his wife for so long, but he just is completely disgusting. But he's got to say something. He can't ignore or say he can't remember anything. It can't. I mean, it seems now that he deserves to go to a court case and see whether he should be in prison. But what happens to the royal family is a very difficult understanding.
If these allegations are proved to be true, which Andrew denies, would prison be the right outcome, do you think, Angela?
Well, I don't know what you would do with him, would you? I mean, where do you put him? He's gone into a quiet place. But, you know, if he goes abroad, he can be very disgusting over there. And that will actually come back and hurt the royal family again. I mean, he's been cut off, but his body's there, and he's still, you know, a part of the royal family. And I think maybe he's doing a lot of this to punish everybody for not letting him take over and be king and all that. He didn't want Charles to be king. He wanted to be king himself because he was more clever.
Here we go again, the revenge of the spare, Angela. Briefly, if you can. I mean, this is, you know, if these allegations are true, then it's complete contempt for the institution of the monarchy to reportedly have relations with these young women, potentially trafficked into the UK on palace property, you know, Buckingham Palace, those sorts of venues, potentially whilst the Queen was in residence at the same time, using the family surname of Windsor as a nickname to protect these women's identity. I mean, this guy was out of control.
Yes, exactly. And I think he still is. I mean, because to deny everything and pretend, on the other hand, he can't remember anything, it's just dreadful. But if you remember that the Queen gave him £12 million so that he could give it to Virginia, and he's never paid a penny back. He's just kept that. So that's actually, I think, a sign of how revolting he is.
A couple of seconds, Angela. I want to pick up on your concerns for the King's health. He's still battling cancer. He scaled back his treatment this year, but the Andrew headlines aren't going to do his health any favours whatsoever.
No, this sort of pain actually makes you ill almost automatically. You know, you must think how dreadful things are. And I hope this doesn't affect the cancer. I hope that with his family they can look after him, not with Andrew, of course, but he can help him. But it's very, very dangerous time when you have to be calm, you have to be kind to people who are that ill. So I hope that he, you know, I know that Camilla will look after him a lot and that he will get over this, but I don't think you can ever get over this properly.
Angela, always fantastic having you on the programme. Fleet Street royalty, Angela Levin, royal biographer and journalist, one of the people to speak to on the big royal stories of the day. Much more to come. Next up, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Did he make a mistake apologising for his remarks? Your calls next.
Billy won a Grammy and you dropped 20K for a ticket. I was invited, and I'm going to be invited again next year, so y'all better keep those tears ready for another year.
Piers Morgan, he says that woke is dead. Now, that's the main thing I think he's gotten wrong there.
The night of the election, there's one thing we learned as a country. Nobody values the opinion of a celebrity. I have a list of things wrong with Mamdani, and being Muslim is not even on that list.
It could be, quite frankly, the death of New York City as we know it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:55, lovely to have your company. Thank you for the calls, the texts and the voice notes as well. I'm back tomorrow. I've got Sunday off and I'm back all week on Breakfast next week. All week I'm in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle, so do join me then. Radcliffe, did he apologise? Was it the right thing for him to apologise? Debbie says, Starmer thinks Radcliffe should apologise. Where's our apology from Starmer calling us Brits far-right thugs? And Simon says PM is protecting Radcliffe by making him apologise. An apology may save a huge financial impact. And what about this on immigration from an unnamed texter? Good morning, Mark. Something to consider. Migrants who get settled status and often have multiple children will get national insurance credit for each child until their youngest is 12. This means that non-working migrants with lots of kids will also get enough years of Class 3 national insurance credit to receive a state pension, having only taken from the system, never putting anything in. This is unaffordable. Adam's in Nottingham. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning. Yes, you've been going on about, people have been going on about this all the time, but his comments, Jim's comments, doesn't bother me at all. Don't scare me. He's got an opinion, whether he's wording wrong. I'm glad he hasn't apologised for the wording, but not the meaning. But none of that bothers me. What scares me, what worries me the most, was Keir Starmer telling him what he should be saying and what he shouldn't be saying.
Yes.
And that's just, to me, that's just horrible. Absolutely horrible. And I know it's because recently I was at a dinner party with family, and, I brought this up, and I was told to be quiet and shut up.
Yeah.
I can only assume these people are Labour voters.
Adam, listen, call me again because I want to hear more from you. I agree with every syllable. Have a great Friday and we'll speak soon, Adam. Gareth is in Derbyshire. Good morning, Gareth.
Good morning. Nice to speak to you.
You too, Gareth.
Yeah, there was a couple of things, about this Jim Ratcliffe affair.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is brought to attention, which is really important, is the incredible level of population increase in the last 25 years. Because I think when you look at, if you Google population and just do it each decade, it obviously started in the late 90s. And from the late 90s onwards, it's gone up about 20%. So it's gone up 12 million from about 58 to 60 million.
Correct.
Up to what it is today. Now, they tell us it's 70 million. A lot of your listeners might think, well, is that accurate? Is there any leeway on that? Could it be 75 million people in this country?
It could be. And also, we have the figures for the boats, Gareth, which is 70,000 since Starmer got in. But that figure of illegal immigration could be a lot higher with people outstaying their visas or coming into the UK on trucks.
Yeah, and we've got no proper way of counting them.
Yeah.
Now, in my lifetime, because when I was at school in the 70s, I was told then the population was about, I seem to remember being told in geography that it was about 58 million then, but if you Google it, it says it was about 56. So in the 25 years from 1970, 75 to 2000, it only went up like 2 or 3%, which is actually in line with the rest of Europe, because I think Simon Jordan enlightened everybody yesterday when he looked at the figures across Europe as a whole, and their population increase has actually stayed level at about 2 to 3%. So